within 24 hours, it was, you could see it was started going pink, rice and pink on the edges, and the edges of the cut started folding over. And then it made me think to myself, well, they've got to be doing more than just keeping this wound clean. They've got to be doing something else, and that's something I never got back to find out exactly what they do. I think probably what's happening is that any dead tissue or any hard tissue they'll attack immediately, because that's what they're doing here with grains. I mean, we use the hardest grains in the world are in Australia. And a situation I had was they were bringing horses over from New Zealand and they couldn't acclimatise to Australian conditions. It's only across the Tasman Sea, but the thing was that there wasn't the climate, it was the hard feed we have here. We have the hardest, driest grains in the world, and their horses didn't have the gut flora good enough to be able to break this feed down. So the horses would go months and months and months and be sick, and they couldn't race them. So what we're doing, we're sending it over to New Zealand. They're feeding it to the horses, the horse tonic we make. They're feeding it to the horses in New Zealand, putting them on the plane, flying them out here and racing them straight off the plane. And they acclimatise immediately. There's not a problem. All they needed was the good flora. Because a horse, in its small intestine is the only place it uses any of its own digestive juices. Any of its own digestive system is used in the small intestine, 50% by itself and 50% by the bacteria. In the large intestine, they have only the good bacteria to get the maximum out of their food. There's nothing else helps a horse. What I'm saying is the horse's own digestive system does not work at all in the large intestine. It's all done by the bacteria, and that produces, the large intestine is what produces all the stamina in a horse. The small intestine is for flight, for their speed. The large intestine is what builds them and makes them strong and gives them stamina.
Okay, sir. Have we covered pretty much the Acidophilus?
Yes, I think so, unless there's any other questions.
Got a question here? Pull that down.
Yeah, I've been led to believe that the breast milk helps with the...
Could you get right next to the mic there, please?
Okay. I've been led to believe that the breast milk does help to develop the gastrointestinal tract of the baby when it's born, and I have sort of been doing a little bit of research myself at the clinic about people with digestive problems, whether they've been breastfed or not, and it seems to impact later on the digestive systems. What I wanted to ask was about the Bulgarius. When you're saying about it liking milk and killing off the other guys, does that have to do with the milk intolerance?
No. I think everybody's seeing this wrong. I should have made myself clearer. It's cow's milk. Yeah. Our mother's milk. We get our bifidus from our mother's milk.
Yes, I'm separating the two.
Yeah. We get our Acidophilus and most of our other strains of lactobacillus from our mother's birth canal, but those Acidophilus are waiting for that first drink from their mother, and that establishes them in that baby's gut. And so, if you've been a long time on the pill, and then you've been 3 years on the pill, even 12 months on the pill, and then you stop the pill to get pregnant, well then you've already got depleted your own, that's when you should be drinking this, and heaps of it, and making sure that it's there. So when the baby gets its first drink of its milk, then because the bifidus will be the first one. Bifidus will travel through the milk. And it's the first one they really need as small babies. Yeah.
So are you saying that the cow's milk is not the one that proliferates the bifidus? Or it does?
No. Bulgaricus we're talking about.
The
Bulgaricus is the one that likes cow's milk, not...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, regarding to her question, because I had that same question. So if you're drinking a lot of milk, will the Bulgarius get out of control, and could this...
Yeah, well, yes, because that's what it does outside the body, so it's certainly going to do it on the inside, because you're giving it the perfect conditions. In here's the perfect conditions. What I do, I can only simulate the... Yeah, I can only simulate the perfect conditions, if you know what I mean. But your gut has the perfect conditions. And if you're going to have a lot of milk, of course that's what's going to happen.
Also yogurts? Anything made with cow products?
Yeah, well, yeah, because, I mean, always comes into my mind about milk. I mean, I drink a little bit of milk in my coffee or my tea, but I saw, I was reading an article where milk, they took the milk from the cow, they did a test of 19 cows, they took with calves, they took the milk from the mother, pasteurised it, and then fed it to the calf, and the longest calf to live was 6 weeks.
Dead in 6 weeks.
It was dead in 6 weeks. So pasteurised milk is no good for the calves. So how in the heck can it be any good to us, you know?
And never mind homogenous on top of that.
Yeah, and then they homogenise it on top of it. Yeah.
Right. But also, I wanted to answer your question also on the milk
Yeah.
intolerance.
Yeah.
We do have an enzyme, lactase, which would help with that.
What I wanted to bring out here is that by the age of about 3, the body no longer secretes lactase, which is used to digest milk products. And that's when the baby usually has its teeth. Now, the problem is that the milk are for little babies. The milk is not for human consumption, for adults, because people reach a certain age, like 3, and they no longer are able to digest the milk due to the fact there's no lactase being secreted for that purpose, and therefore you'll have milk intolerance at that point of time. So this is really important. Now, did you have a question, dear? Come up here, please.
It's about unpasteurised goat's milk. Can you make yogurt out of it? But then you just said that about the lactase. Does that also apply to goat's milk as well?
Look,
I mean, milk generally.
Yeah. Milk is a very good carrier of bacteria. It is a good carrier of bacteria, and that's good or bad, because we can get TB from fresh cows. But if I had the choice and I was able to get it, I mean, the fresh cow's milk from the cow would be in preference to any other sort of milk that you could have, because it'd be that much better for you. And goats, it would be exactly the same. Yeah,
right.
Whole milk, not. So you don't have the TB problem with. There's no real reason to pasteurise your milk, goat's milk, because that's the reason they're doing it, because of TB.
That's right.
Yeah, they didn't want. Yeah.
Okay, and can the goat's milk can be digested even?
The goat's milk will still give milk intolerance, but it's much better than cow's milk. Cow's milk is primarily full of calcium, while your goat's milk is primarily full of potassium, which the human body needs. We don't need the calcium. We need magnesium. We don't need calcium.
Yeah.
But we do need potassium, and this is where goat milks, the curd of the milk of the goat, will be almost the same as the curd size of mother's milk. That's why if a mother cannot nurse properly, goat milk would be a very excellent substitute. Now, what we do to avoid this bacterial content, where you know how goat milk, if you leave it, it stinks pretty quickly and tastes just absolutely terrible. If you take about 10 drops of your aerobic, your oxygen, stabilized forms of oxygen, and put that into the goat's milk, that it'll keep without breaking down for quite a period of time, and you leave it right out in the open, in the room, and it'll slowly turn into a kind of a clabbered milk, but it won't go off on you. Okay? Now, that's just oxygen. Same thing with cow's milk if you drink your cow's milk. But be sure to take lactase as an extra enzyme to help digest that cow's milk, or else it ferments in the stomach. It turns into a problem area. Okay?
Can I just add one little thing there to all that, is that is the word fresh. It keeps coming and knocking me in the head all the time. Fresh means fresh. If you can understand what I'm saying, there's no other substitute word for fresh. Fresh means picked and eaten. And if you have to go and lay underneath a goat, but remember that. I mean, there's nothing freshly frozen for 3 months. There's no such thing. It has to be fresh. The bacteria are fresh on the leaves of your cabbage. It's nice and fresh. You can eat it. It's crisp. It's crunchy. And it's picked and eaten. And that's what fresh means. So be careful when you're shopping in supermarkets or doing any of your shopping. Really think, is it fresh? Because fresh means just picked and eaten.
As a younger man, I made it a point to travel down to Mexico to get schooled under the training of Dr. Edward Carl, who was the president of the National Health Federation of Mexico. And he was just a brilliant man. Now, when we went down to see him, he told us a story about just a few years before, he had terminal pancreatic cancer. They gave him up to die. He went out into the desert with one goat, and he did nothing but live on fresh goat's milk right from the nipple. And he recovered completely on a goat milk fast from pancreatic cancer. This is something just to consider here about the curative value of fresh, raw goat milk. Now, this is his experience. And I remember at the age of 51, we'd have foot races, and he'd beat anybody on a foot race. And he built his body back up to where he was just an absolute epitome of good health. Now, that was kind of interesting to me because we considered ourselves fairly fast at the time.
The nutritional quality of a milk is going to be quite dependent upon the feed of the animal as well, and that's a simple matter. You can take cows and goats and you can compare the quality of the milk of ones that are fed certain types of foods, and it's going to vary. The vitamin content, the mineral content, everything's going to vary widely. So if you look at the situation that John's talking about, this goat is out in the desert and it's eating what would be a very natural diet for a goat. A goat, if you've ever had goats, I mean, the goats are not an animal that really on its own would eat grass. Goats will go for the herbs, they'll go for the trees, they'll go for the shrubs and all the rest. And so you got to figure most of the people that are supplying the goat's milk and the cow's milk, the cows are not grass fed anymore to any great extent. A lot of it's grains and feeds and that sort of thing. So the cow's milk's not going to be what it ought to be. The goats are probably going to be in a grass pasture instead of being allowed to eat the shrubs and the trees and all the rest. So again, the quality is not going to be what it really ought to be, just because the feed of the animal isn't what it ought to be. And this gentleman, he wasn't just getting any old goat's milk. He was getting a goat that was allowed to browse freely and eat the food that was the best for the goat.
Okay, Corey, are you there, sir? Do you have a little can of Grainfields powder? Could you bring one of those up here, please? We're going to shift from Acidophilus now, and we're going to shift into something that is going to be extremely exciting for you, because this has been extremely exciting for me. Thank you. We're going to continue on for a while. Lunch is ready, but we're going to continue on for a while because we have short fuse time-wise. So if it's all right here, we're still within range. Okay. Now this is exceedingly important, so get your pencil sharp here on your note-taking. First of all, to preface all of our remarks here, What we have found, because of the decadence of society and the people who are eating a lot of cooked food, it has created a severe enzyme drain on the body, and our digestion has been literally reached a point now where it's not functioning properly. One of the necessary items that we need as what we would call a coenzyme are the amino acids that you get from protein. Now, you need, first of all, your 8 basic amino acids, and from the 8 basic amino acids, you're able to synthesize 12 more amino acids for a total of 20, that you get your full amino acid requirements for hormone manufacturing and secretion, that the hormones in the body may be kept at a proper level. The Acidophilus by itself will not do this. It'll help with the digestion that's there, and you can have all the nutrients in the world, but if you don't have Acidophilus, you won't be able to utilize it properly. The same thing is true because the protein in the form of amino acids act as an enzyme carrier, and is necessary for every physiological everything physical going on in every cell of the body. And this means your hormones require all 20 amino acids for hormone secretion. So digestion breaks down the protein that we eat into the necessary amino acids. Everybody over the age of 30. Now I might be a little bit lenient here. It's probably closer to 20 because of the amount of junk food that everybody eats. But everybody over the age of 30 will have a zone 1 ring in the iris of the eye that we'll be covering next week in the iridology section of our course here. And this indicates that the person will have a lack of hydrochloric acid, lack of pepsin, lack of digestive enzymes to take care of protein digestion. Now, not just protein, we talked about that before, but I'm talking now only on protein digestion. So if there is a deficiency of the protease enzyme from the pancreas, which in most people's cases there are, you're not going to break the protein down into your necessary amino acids. At best, only a little bit is going to be broken down. The rest is going to go into mucoprotein, which we talked about yesterday. Now, bottom line, I took my problem on protein digestion to Alan. What do we do for incomplete protein digestion? And I'd like to have Alan tell you the rest of the story. This will be very, very exciting for you.
Well, the first thing I said to John that we have to do is we'll pre-digest it. So that when you we'll make a product where all the proteins, the best proteins, range of proteins we could put together, we'll pre-digest them. And then you take them, your body doesn't have to do any work at all, it's already there. And it's, you know, so I said if we mix the two together, the liquid.
Did you hear
and the powder,
that? Did you hear that? The body doesn't have to do any work at all on the protein. What's that going to do for the hypoglycemic that has a deficiency in your protein digestion? What's that going to do for the old folk that can't digest anything at all, nothing works? What did you say again, sir? Make this very clear so every ear here understands the beauty of this whole program.
yeah. I completely pre-digest the protein.
What does that mean?
It means, as John said, your body doesn't have to do any work at all. It's already been done for it.
So what happens to all of the protein that you take in?
It's totally utilized by the body. It's absorbed by the body as amino acids, because that's what it's
Do you understand?
been broken into.
All of the amino acids in the protein in this particular product is already broken down and pre-digested. You take this internally, you don't have to digest it. It is pre-digested through the fermentation process, and the body can absorb it directly. If you take this material, you'll have staying power all day long. The energy will be there because you will have the protein. And this is an absolute must for many, many people who have protein digestion problems, which most people, frankly, have today. Go ahead, sir.
The other thing is that our cells, for a healthy immune system, which is one of my prime concerns, when I make anything, I have to get, I like to sit and think it right through. Our little cells are like little mini factories, and they make their own enzymes and hormones, and they make all these things themselves. What we've got to do is supply them with amino acids so that they can make these, because it might be for cleaning your liver, doing something in your liver, or repairing liver damage. It might be for anything, nerve damage or anything like that. Your cells call on specific amino acids to do those jobs. And it's our job, because the cells are living things, and within our body they're little living animals. It's our job to look after them by supplying them with the right foods, by supplying them with the necessary amino acids for them to be able to do that job, because they want to stay healthy, and healthy cells means a healthy immune system. 25%, up to 25% of our, and I know everybody's felt this, you've had a big meal and all you want to do is go to sleep. And that's the first sign, in my mind, that's the first sign saying that you're overtaxing your digestive system. Because your digestive system is using too much of its energy to break down what you've eaten so it can get the maximum out of it. And is it getting the maximum out of it? So this way, you can supply all those amino acids. This is the way I thought about it. We give them, we give all amino acids, everything we need to the cells. The body doesn't have to digest anything. You taste it, because your tongue tells your stomach what's happening. Like if you're having grain fields, for instance, if you've got an acid stomach and you've got really bad heartburn, well, have a glass of grain fields. It's lactic acid, full of lactic acid, and people say, oh, that's more acid. But it's not that. Your taste buds tell your tummy, hey guys, we've got a dose of acid coming down here, we better knock off work, you see. So they knock off work and zoom. And then everybody says, oh, it's miraculous. It's an acid that gets rid of acid stomach. And it's not that, it's the taste buds are doing it. It's not the product, it's your taste buds.
In Europe, they have done extensive research on lactic acid and found that this destroys the cancer cells in the body. And so when you take a tremendous amount of this lactic acid internally, the cancer cells cannot grow because you have created an environment which is aerobic in the system, that the anaerobic bacteria cannot grow, and a cancer can only grow in an anaerobic environment. And this is where lactic acid is in this material also, and that's what preserves it and keeps it from deteriorating, because this will have a shelf life of about 18 months. This will have a shelf life, I believe, about the same, 18 months. And that's beautiful, because everything cannot deteriorate because it's preserved with your natural lactic acid. The bacteria cannot grow in this substance. Do you get that? That's extremely important. Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to relate to you an experience I had with horses in pre-digested proteins. As I explained to you earlier about the small intestine of the horse, that's where it gets all its energy from, its flight. And that's because a horse doesn't have any teeth or claws or anything to protect itself with. All it has is flight. It gets this panic energy under stress from its small intestine only, not from the large intestine, but the small intestine. So what I trialled with a racehorse trainer, or trotter trainer here in Brisbane, he's got 18 horses in his stable, and I made up a powder that you feed this to the horse 4 hours before the race, because it takes 4 hours to go from the horse's stomach through the small intestine into the large intestine. And that was, I designed it so that it would give the horse everything it needed for that mad, panic, under stress race. And my sole thoughts were on the horse. I wanted to see the horse finish the race and in 5 minutes after it be ready to run another one. I mean, it was not to be any detriment to the horse at all. What I found he was doing, he found that the horses had that much energy with this stuff that he could come from 500 metres out. Now everybody knows that in a race meeting, every horse has the last 100 metres. Every horse has 100 metres. They try to save that horse for the last 100 metres and then belt them home. So what he was doing, he was belting his horses home from 500 metres out. And going past the favourites, and the favourites said, well, we've got to go too. And they only had 100 metres, and because he was winning everything. He won the most prize money in the history of Queensland as a trotting trainer, yeah. So that's an example of what can be done with pre-digested things. But the other example we had, John wanted me to make up another product called, especially for BE people, with spirulina and barley grass, and he came up with this recipe, and I said, well, it's not a problem, we'll do it. And in my studies of spirulina, I suddenly discovered that the only animal in the world that can truly get 100% digest spirulina 100% is the poor old flamingo. He lives on the stuff. And we can have 5 teaspoons a day, and our body, if we're lucky, we might get 1. So I thought, well, I've got this beat, this is going to be good. So we made up the product, we tried it out on everybody. I completely pre-digested the protein. Took 21 days, the process. Took 21 days to break the spirulina, which is 60% protein, down into amino acids. And then we've tried it out on a few. John's tried it, you've tried it, John, haven't you? It's away at the DPI, and this is a Department of Primary Industries here in Brisbane. And they're doing an analysis on it for us, so that we can, when we get that back, then we can start manufacturing it. Yeah.
Did everyone understand that the human body only breaks down perhaps 20% of the available spirulina? And the other 80% is just absolute waste because the body cannot break it down because of the nature of the spirulina? And what this does, by taking the spirulina, which is an expensive product, and we've got the material from Hawaii, which is low temperature processed to begin with.
And organic, yeah.
And organic, so it's all clear, it's all the very best quality. You're going to get 5 times as much pre-digested protein out of this product than you can get from just taking spirulina down just by itself. Because chances are much of it is not going to be digested at all. I doubt the 20%. I doubt if it's that high.
No, that's on a really healthy person, yeah.
Okay, that's for a healthy person. But most people have digestive problems and they don't get the results from the spirulina they'd like to have. Now, let me explain to you one of the most important aspects of this. When we get the blockages out of the endocrine system with body electronics, you still have hormone problems because you're still going to have problems with protein digestion, okay? But when you get the protein into your system with all of the amino acids fully absorbed by the body, you're going to have to understand that one of your hormones, such as called the human growth hormone, requires all 20 amino acids for secretion, manufacturing and secretion. Okay, now when we get somebody with a middle-age spread, which most people start getting flabby muscles and start putting on a lot of weight, fat around their body, and they get unhealthy, you will have to find that when you take this particular material here, that with a minimal amount of exercise, the human growth hormone takes over and suddenly the muscles begin to build back as it was when you're in your youth, and the fat disappears off your body. And I think this is kind of exciting because, now take Doug for example. Doug, you've been taking some of this, and he's put on how many kilograms?
The first month that I did the grain fields, I put on about 3 to 4 kilograms, which is, for me, I've really always had a problem putting weight on, so that was quite significant. I basically had weighed the same from the age of about 17 to 35.
And now he's starting to put weight on and it's starting to look good. You can see his chest expanding, the muscles expanding. The muscles are getting hard rather than, I don't want to use the word flabby, I'll say small muscles that he had before, but he couldn't put any weight on. And now the muscle structure is coming on firmly. You can see it on him. This is exciting to me. We've tried this with athletes, and we've given this stuff to some of the athletes that are now breaking records. And they put on more muscle, get rid of all of the unnecessary fat, and it strengthens up their body. Now this we find, just like he's doing it with the horses, it works for humans too. And this is kind of exciting to us because it takes away the problems of staying power. You know how people get tired in the afternoon, they start breaking down and so on, they can't function all day? You take this stuff and you function all day long. And you've got all the energy there, the brain's active and alert, everything's moving and everything's working well. So I just want to say that this is what my finding has been on this. It helps out with the hormone system, everything comes right, people's bodies become normal. And I want to say this also. I have had, for years, I've had a thyroid that didn't work. I attribute that to mercury. My immune system has come back, working fully, and my thyroid has been working for the first time in over 60 years. And this has been exciting to me because it's changed my whole body again to where my whole body function is now functioning absolutely normally as far as temperature control in my thyroid. And this is exciting to me because I feel better now in my 60s than I ever felt in my life.
Thanks, John. I'd just like to say, and I don't want you all galloping out of here and whinnying and kicking your heels in the air, but a horse's hemoglobin is the closest to ours there is in the animal world. Not even monkeys or apes have the same as us. Hemoglobin. The hemoglobin of a horse and the human is the closest of the two. So if we, when we come back, hopefully I'll come back as a raging stallion or something. Definitely a black one there, you know. He gets to play with all the good girls.
Now, sir, would you like to go into detail on what is really happening to this and what percentage of this is assimilable protein?
I've been asked this question, and it's a difficult one. I was asked, can you compare it to something like a bowl of fruit or 6 loaves of bread to the teaspoon, and it's always it's one I'm pursuing now with the DPI. I want them to come out and give me an analysis so we can do a comparison, whether it's 6 bowls of fruit or 8 pork chops or whatever. But I've balanced it down to our body weight, and because we have this argument going on all the time, don't we, Kev? But I'd say 50 grams. What you really need to have is 50 grams, right, per day. Yeah. And I think, and that's 4 heaping teaspoons, or 2 level tablespoons, or however you want to do it. And also to mix it with the live, which is, I made the BE. This has got lemon and ginger in it, so it's a lot easier for you to, a lot more palatable. You can always dilute this in water, or you can dilute it in fruit juice that doesn't have ascorbic acid in it. Now, to mix the two together, the BE liquid and the powder together, then you really are getting the ultimate food, because of all the vitamins, because it's the way I see it, our digestive system is working so fast, we need to be able to get that energy boost, and we need to be able to slow it up. A lot of people are using bananas, mixing bananas with it to slow their metabolism down, and they believe that they assimilate it better and feel the energy boost a lot sooner than other people. But you know, I mean, you might have all your own ways of mixing it up, but I know John has his too. But mix the two together, because nothing beats the live source. If you've got the live source in there, they'll synthesize the vitamins that are already in here, that have been created by the fermentation process. So you want to get the maximum of those B group vitamins and the vitamin C that's in there. That was another thing under the analysis that it says here, ascorbic acid. Now that's not, none of this is put in there. The fat, 10.1 grams of fat, is because there's a lot of flaxseed in there, right? And it's essential fatty acids. It's omega-3 fats. The protein is not the protein. They couldn't measure the protein of the powder, because it's already in amino acids. The protein that's on the label is the protein that's in the malt that I put in there to sweeten it and as a food. Now everybody says, oh, what are you putting malt in there? Because it's a simple sugar and it's there for the bacteria to have a feed on when they're down in their stomach. It's not there for you. All right, so I send them down with a packed lunch. Can't have them getting hungry on the way. Yeah. So, and the ash is, of course, the minerals. But, you know, that's another thing to look at labels. When you're reading labels, that you understand those sorts of things, you know, especially with my products, anyway, because I don't add fat. I don't know if there's any, if I use any salt at all, I use only the Celtic sea salt. And it's not very often. It's not in this product and it's not in that. Mostly because we need to have those sea minerals. That's another thing, that's over-refined, which is a sad thing.
Would you be kind enough to give the phone number of the shop for people? There are quite a few people here who are therapists, where they can order the stuff directly from you.
Yes, Kath's got some cards there. We'll leave up on the counter with Linda, if anybody wants a business card. And if you don't want a business card, buy a jar of this, and it's already there on the label for you. And you can give us a ring. And just remember, ask for Alan or for Kate. Oh, right. Well, it's AGM Fermented Foods, 104 Berrima Street, Wynnum. That's Queensland 4178. And our phone number is 07 3396 2866. And our fax number is 07 3396 2883. Thank you. I was going to say, let Kath have a little talk. So you recognise her voice on the phone. She does all that. She's always telling me I'm never there, but I've always got things to do, you know. It's a man's work that's never done. And she reckons it's true too.
I think am I going to let the cat out of the bag if I tell him what else is going to be happening? All right? All right? Okay. There's a little device that takes everything and grinds it down to a submicron level. That'll be the first time this has been used in the world, and he will have one in his shop. That will be using all of the different foods and will put them through a fermentation process grind it up to a very fine powder, making it instantly assimilable to the human body on a colloidal level. And the food will be instantly utilized by the body because it does not have to go through the digestion process because it has all been pre-digested. I think that this will be one of the finest things that we have in view of our digestion problems for everyone to correct these, the ability to assimilate the food. This is within just a few weeks away. And when this comes out, this will be literally a first for this type of product. So those of you who are therapists, you get in and get on the mailing list so that you can be able to get this for your people. This will be one of the most important things that we have done in the food business, as far as I'm concerned, for a long, long time. I want to thank Alan, and I want to thank Kate for her support of Alan in taking the time and effort to put these things together on the things that we have brainstormed on now for since last year.
Yeah.
We've been putting a lot of things together, and they're starting to come out. Because you consider what would happen. Here's the problem. How do we solve this? Alan has put his genius into that aspect, and we've solved the problem. Now it's just a matter of getting the word out to people where we'll have a health product that will be probably more vital than anything else on the market today, which I believe to be true.
Yes, thanks, John.
Okay, Doug, anything you want to add, sir? Okay, Kate, Anita? Okay, food's ready. It's not ready. Dr. Doug Morrison will be taking time on explaining some material on what we will call the essential fatty acids. So Doug, go for it.
Okay, this is in the patient's guide on page 35. I'd recommend, if you're looking for a good book on fats and oils, one that I'd certainly recommend is called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. It's a revision of an earlier book that was called Fats and Oils, but it's now called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, and it's by a Canadian by the name of Udo Erasmus. His first name is spelled U-D-O, Udo or Udo, U-D-O, and his last name Erasmus is E-R-A-S-M-U-S, E-R-A-S-M-U-S. And another good little pamphlet that you can get. Most of the best research that's been done on fats and oils going back over the last 40 years or so has been done by a German biochemist by the name of Dr. Joanna Budwig, B-U-D-W-I-G. Joanna Budwig, B-U-D, her name's down at the bottom of page 35 there. Unfortunately, unless you happen to read German, very little of her information is available in the English language, but there is a small pamphlet. I know Graham Clare keeps it in stock. Do you guys have copies of that, Linda, by any chance? Just a personal copy, or one's for sale? You can get them? Okay, so if you're interested, it's a little booklet. It's called Flax Oil as a True Aid Against Cancer, Heart Infarction, and Arthritis. And see Linda if you want to get a copy of that. It's only about maybe 60 pages long or so. Oh yes, then there's that. Yeah, there's a video that I put out with Kanan and Sakara last year as well on the fats and oils. I almost forgot about that. They got me a copy of it about a week before I left the States in September, and I truthfully haven't even watched it myself yet. So, if I recommend it, it's only because I haven't seen it. So here it is.
Can I just?
Or books and a videotape and some other things available on the fats and oils.
Yeah, I believe that he does have some of these books also. Some of the books that we are mentioning, he said he was going to get them in, so you could ask him about them instead of going to the States. I believe he's gotten them in.
At any rate, the fats and oils is a subject that's been nutritionally that's been somewhat neglected until maybe the last 4 or 5 years. It hasn't had a lot of attention, and it's a subject area, in my opinion, in which there's still a tremendous amount of misinformation and pretty widespread ignorance. Part of this is the result of the way the media and the food conglomerates have portrayed things, and we've all been sort of conned into looking at things a certain way. Fat itself has pretty much come to be a dirty word in most people's vocabulary, but the reality is if you don't have certain types of fats in your diet, you can't possibly even live without the right kinds of fats. So one of the first misconceptions you have to get out of your head is that fat is bad, because there's as the title of that book suggests, there's fats that heal and fats that kill. There's types of fats that you absolutely can't live without, and there's other types of fats that are quite detrimental to your health, and there's also types of fats that are more or less neutral. They don't really hurt you a lot, but they don't really help you a lot. So you have to get beyond a lot of the oversimplifications and distortions that you're going to get in the media and in the commercials and all the rest. Margarine would be a pretty outstanding example of that, because that's probably one of the worst foods out there for people, and yet it's been portrayed as a health food, and it's absolutely one of the most detrimental things you can consume. The author of the book, Udo Erasmus, UDO. Graham Clare is the... Okay, so at any rate, this is just some very basic information on fats and oils and on essential fatty acids here on page 35 of the patient guide. You can certainly go into a lot greater detail than this if you want, but number one, there are 2 essential fatty acids. These essential nutrients have been shown by leading researchers to be necessary for both the optimum health of the body as well as for freedom from degenerative disease. They are known as omega-3, also known as alpha-linolenic acid or ALNA, and omega-6, which is linoleic acid or LA. You'll find that nowadays most everybody will refer to the essential fatty acids as omega-3 and omega-6, but I give the other names there because if you read stuff that was written 15, 20, 30 years ago, you may see them referred to by some of their other names. Yeah, actually, if you go far enough back, omega-6 was at one point known as vitamin F1, and omega-3 was at one point known as vitamin F2. So if you go way far back in the literature, you may get a little confused if you start reading about the F vitamins. But you're probably going to have to read something that was written in the 1950s or earlier to see that. Nowadays, most people just say omega-3 and omega-6. A healthy body can basically derive all of the other fatty acids that are needed from these 2. So these are the 2, these are essential because they're ones that you can't produce yourself. So long as you get sufficient quantities of these, you can generally produce enough of whatever other fatty acids you might need in the body. Number 2, along with and by the way, I mean, the easiest way to look at it is this. Fats and oils are made up of fatty acids, just like proteins are made up of amino acids. So if you want to just be very, keep it short and simple here, just think of a fatty acid as like the building block of a fat or an oil. Any fat or oil is made up of a grouping of fatty acids, just like any protein is made up of a group of amino acids. So basically, just as proteins are digested in the body and broken down into amino acids, which your body can then use, just like your body will take protein and break it down into its amino acids and then utilize some of those amino acids and derive other amino acids, as needed. That's the same thing it's going to do with fats and oils. It's going to break them down into their fatty acids. It's going to use some of those fatty acids, and it's going to synthesize other fatty acids from the essential ones. So most of you, I think, are pretty familiar with that with regard to protein. I'm sure most of you know that protein's made up of amino acids. So just recognize that this is just the counterpart for that. John, did you have something? Okay. At any rate, number 2, along with proteins, essential fatty acids or EFAs are the building blocks of cell membranes and various internal cell structures. If you look down at the cellular level, the larger part of the fat that makes up a cell is going to be found in the membrane of the cell, and the protein is going to tend to be more concentrated in the interior of the cell. And
now, I want you to understand something, folks. Some of this is kind of dry
Or oily.
or oily. I want you to listen to Doug very, very carefully as to what he has to say on this subject, because Doug says nothing has been brought out until about the last 4 years. Back in 1989, which is about 7-8 years ago, we had in Motueka, in the South Island of New Zealand, we had a clinic. And at that time, we had probably about 1,000 patients. And we had what we called a chelation clinic, oral chelation clinic. And we had people who had been programmed for triple heart bypasses, double heart bypasses. They were scheduled to have all kinds of surgery, one thing or another, because they had irreparable, shall we say, heart conditions built upon the idea that all of their arteries were 99% clogged, 90% clogged, and so on. We simply put them on a program, and this is why I want you to pay attention to this fatty acid business, because this is no kid game. You have to know what you're doing with it. You have to use the right type of fatty acids. But we had a program where I cannot think of one patient that didn't get completely cleaned out of their arteries after just a short time, where the doctors couldn't understand why the arteries were completely free of all obstructions. After, in some cases, they were completely obstructed and they were on the verge. They said they're going to die if they didn't have an operation. Well, they didn't like that, so they came to our clinic. And we had patient after patient after patient freed from the ravages of this kind of an argument, you know, that they had to have the triple bypass surgery. Now, this is what we confronted. And I can't think of one patient who when they followed the program, that they didn't have relief within 2 weeks of all the pain and all of the anguish, and the arteries started getting cleaned out. Now, when this flax oil is used properly, and I want you to listen to what Doug has to say carefully, but when it's used properly and kept away from sunlight and oxygen, that flax oil will be one of the most marvelous things in the world to give you the essential fatty acids necessary to, shall I use the word, to emulsify and clean out the arteries. We've had so many people helped by this, just so many. We have people flying into the Cook Islands. We take care of them. They go back home, and 2 or 3 months later they say we're completely clean bill of health from the doctors. The doctors don't understand it. I don't have to have my bypass surgery. Just on the program itself with a minimal amount of point holding. So please pay close attention. I know sometimes after a little meal we sit back and we feel a little tired, but kind of force yourself to pay close attention and get all this information under your belt. This is powerful, powerful information for you. Doug? Anita wants to say something.
No, I just wanted to give you the oral chelation program that we used at the clinic. And first of all, I took the person off of all fried foods, which I believe Doug's going to go into in just a couple minutes, but I'll just give you the ingredients of this program. I took them off of all fried foods, and I put them on a high fiber diet. And we put them on 2 tablespoons of flax oil 3 times a day. Oh, tablespoon would be serving spoon, right? Dessert spoon. 2 dessert spoon 3 times a day, yeah. And lipase, 2 capsules of lipase enzyme 3 times a day. Lecithin, 1 capsule 3 times a day. And also niacin. Niacin, which is vitamin B3, which acts as a vasodilator to open up the capillaries.
The flax oil emulsifies the fats and cholesterols that are in the blood walls of the blood vessel. The lecithin helps that fats and cholesterol to be liquefied as it works hand in glove with the flax oil. The lipase digests out the emulsified cholesterol and fat. Now that's the reason we have these. Now, Doug, if you'll tie in the fried foods later on your material here, and if you'll tie in the, that's bottom line, the bad fats, so to speak, the funny fats, we call them. And then the niacin dilates the blood vessels so that all of the nutrients can get into the blood vessels to help to clear them out. Now these are essentially the program on the oral chelation. You take this along with the regular program that Anita will be going over with you a little later on, and we'll handle this. But this will help tremendously on any type of a clogged up artery program. I had one lady who was very prominent in the Miss World organization. She was the what they call the chaperone for Mrs. World, and also Miss America contest. We had some of our people in body electronics that won those contests. But she ended up with a leg that was totally blocked, and they wanted to amputate it. It was about 3 times normal size. All of the venous structure, the veins were all blocked off, and she wasn't getting she was getting circulation to the leg, but it wasn't circulating on through. And they wanted to cut off her leg. And I told her absolutely not. And but they said if she were to delay one more day, it could cost her life because of blood clots. And so we put her on a program to remove the blood clots, all oral chelation program, plus the Schweitzer Formula, which kept the blood pretty well thinned. Now, with this material that Anita will be going over with you, this Schweitzer Formula, and this little lady, about a week later, they wanted to cut off the leg from the knee down, because that would never come back. It was gone. And they didn't want the leg to go on because of the gangrene. A week later, they want to cut off only the ankle, from the ankle down. And a week later, she was out playing tennis. But all of the blockages that were in her leg were dissolved by this oral chelation program. We've helped so many people with this program. And it's a terribly dangerous thing, as you well know. But with many cases of gangrene and so on, the body does come back without the need for surgery. Don't let them carve on you. The surgeons are educated to believe that anything can be cured by surgery. The situation is, to save a life, surgery may be important somewhere, somehow. But unless it's a terribly life-threatening situation, we do it naturally and we get the job done. So just please remember this. Now, the oral chelation program is hand in glove with the regular program that we'll be talking about a little later on. Doug, pardon me, Anita, are you done?
How much niacin? How much niacin?
We'll talk about that later. Well, that's on the docket. We'll get that cleared, if not this week, next week. Doug.
If you just look at the structure of a cell, you'll find that a large amount of the fat or the fatty acids in a cell are going to be on the membrane or on the periphery of the cell, and the proteins are going to be concentrated more in the interior of the cell. And according to Dr. Budvig, this is very, very important, because if you have the right types of fats and proteins together, you actually get an electrical potential difference or a voltage difference, going from the inside to the, from the interior to the exterior of the cell. And so one of the things that you're going to really need to come to understand is the fact that it's not enough to have just the amino acids or just the essential fatty acids. You have to have them both together, because they work together in a lot of your life processes. And that's why I'd recommend in particular you get that little booklet by Dr. Budvig on the flax oil, because that will go into this in a lot of detail.
What Doug has just mentioned is extremely important, because this electric potential difference creates an energy field which creates the calcium pump to help to rid the cell structure of excessive amount of calcium. Where the dairy industry, for example, will tell you you need to have a 6-to-1 calcium-magnesium ratio. This is totally false, because to maintain a healthy body which we discussed during the instructor seminar in great detail, you actually need 2 magnesiums for every 1 of calcium. And that's the ratio, because then this electric potential in the cell gets that calcium pump going to get rid of all the excessive calcium, and then the magnesium is able to enter into the cell, and the cell is restored to its full normal function. Where magnesium is actually the youth vitamin. This keeps the body youthful, keeps the body from becoming arthritic and all calcified up, and keeps the cells at a level where they function normally. Now, I hope this information is helping you a little bit just to put things together. But this, we need a synergistic activity of all the nutrients together, from the amino acids to the fatty acids, to the different materials, the enzyme, the mineral activity, and so on, to make the entire cell function normally to maintain its youthful vitality. Go ahead.
A lot of people nowadays are trying to go on low-fat or no-fat type diets, and this is absolute nonsense and very, very dangerous. If you think of something just as basic as the cell membrane, which is made up of certain types of fatty acids, if you're not getting the proper types of fatty acids, and you're also clogging your system up with a lot of fried foods and margarines and other things, then your cell membrane is going to start basically going to be built out of the wrong types of fats, or at least a portion of the wrong types of fats, and it's not going to function properly. The cell membrane is if your cells are not healthy, obviously you're not healthy, right? I mean, you're made up of cells. The cell membrane has some very important functions, and not the least of which is it's regulating the inflow and the outflow of different substances into the cell. And if your cell membrane's made up of, out of fried foods and margarine and that sort of nonsense, then basically what's going to happen is it's not going to function properly, and substances that are not supposed to be leaving are going to be leaving. Substances that are supposed to be leaving are not going to be able to get out. Substances that are supposed to be getting in are not going to be able to get in. Substances that aren't supposed to get in are going to be able to get in. You're going to have all sorts of chaos right down at the cellular level, simply as a result of the fact that you're deficient in the right sorts of fatty acids, and you're all clogged up with the wrong sorts of fatty acids. So one of the silliest things that people do nowadays is try to avoid fats entirely. It's like it's throwing out the baby with the bathwater, really, because yes, a lot of the fats that people are eating are very, very bad for them. But the solution to that is not to get rid of all fats out of the diet. It's just to get rid of the bad ones and try to actually increase your intake of the proper fats, which would be things like your flax oil and others, which we'll get into. And again, just think of something as basic as the cell membrane. If you want to be healthy, your cell membranes have to be working properly, and they can't do that without an abundance of the right sort of fatty acids. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Number 3, essential fatty acids are necessary for the metabolism and transportation of triglycerides and cholesterol. Again, this is one of the reasons why the flax oil was part of John and Anita's oral chelation program, because it does help not just to clean out the arteries, but to sort of move things around and keep things liquefied in the body. Cholesterol and again, this is another one of those great misconceptions that's only gradually getting dispelled nowadays. Cholesterol is quite essential for your health. If you don't consume cholesterol, your body will simply manufacture it. So cholesterol has been sort of made a culprit far more than it really ought to be.
You know the body needs cholesterol. You got to have it. Doug, go over that material again.
If you didn't eat a single gram of cholesterol, well, your body would just manufacture its own, because you need cholesterol. It's a precursor to all sorts of things that are necessary in the body. So cholesterol is not really the culprit in your heart disease and you know your circulatory disorders. It's not really the bad guy. One of the biggest problems with cholesterol in the body is that in the absence of certain other nutrients, the cholesterol is not going to be in the right form. It's not going to be liquefied. If you take cholesterol in its more or less on its own, it has quite a high melting point, way above body temperature, and so it would be this kind of gray, waxy substance at body temperature. But which would be quite a big problem. But as long as you have present the essential fatty acids and the lecithin, then the cholesterol is going to be liquid at body temperature, and it's going to be able to function quite well within the system. So cholesterol is definitely another area of great myth. You want to talk about that now?
I was going to probably leave this till later, but let's discuss the bottom line. This book is a book by Dr. Kurt Oster, medical doctor, and Donald Ross, PhD, on what they call the XO factor. These people should be the recipient of the Nobel Prize for what they have done, because they have discovered the true cause of the problems that you have concerning cholesterol and fatty substances in the arterial walls causing arterial sclerosis and atherosclerosis. Now, what has taken place here is that in milk, you have a material in the form of an enzyme called xanthine oxidase. You take that internally into the body, especially in a homogenized milk product, and this is absorbed into the villi of the small intestine and will irritate the walls of the arteries, causing an irritation and scar tissue, which then the body, in its attempt to correct that, will start slapping down layers of fatty substances and cholesterol, of which in the walls of the blood vessel, roughly 12% of all the fatty substances is cholesterol. The rest will be the fried fats and funny fats and stuff like that. The body junk is what I call it, that just simply line the arteries, causing varicose veins and causing other problems that would block the arteries. Now, bottom line, this particular book, these people spent 20 years doing the research on it and kept working out the causation of this hardening of the arteries, so to speak. And they found out what it is. Now, we're going to discuss this next week to some degree, and discuss all this to a greater degree in the instructor seminar, but we're going to do it with the iridology and showing how the big white sidewall ring around the iris that several of you have here in this class, this is an indication of the hardening of the arteries and the clogging up of the walls of the blood vessels by this fatty substances, which Doug is yet to go into, and the cholesterol content being about 12%. Now, the bottom line is milk. And this is a no-no, because of the homogenization of your milk products. It breaks up this xanthine oxidase into a very small particle that is then absorbed into the system and will irritate the lining of the arteries and the veins. And this is scarring of these arteries will be the beginning of your deposition of fatty substances, or what we'll call the plaque buildup, which is a combination of your fatty materials and your heavy metals. Now, the enzymes and the minerals help to pull out or chelate out the heavy metals in this plaque material, while as we talked earlier just a few minutes ago, where the flax oil and the lecithin and the lipase will pull out all of this fat material and get that digested and on its way. And then with the Schweitzer formula internally, all of the scar tissue that is there will gradually dissolve, and then this, in the iris of the eye, this what they call a cholesterol ring or a mineral ring or a sodium ring, all synonymous terms, this gradually goes away as the arteries are cleaned out by the chelation program. You see the importance of this? If we don't take care of the hardening of the arteries, then the kidneys go, the heart goes, strokes happen, and we start having serious problems. And this is what we'll get in the iridology next week. Here's the picture, here's what the problem is, here's what we do to correct it. Now, this is exceedingly important. And I question going into this in detail in the beginning of our coursework, because we'll be going into this next week. But I felt it's important to bring this out that you might understand the importance of eating the right type of fats, which Doug is still yet to go into in detail with you. Thank you for your time on that, Doug.
If you want more detail on that, I mean, obviously you can get this book, The XO Factor, but it's also, I've got a number of quotations from that book, and it's pretty well summarized in a couple of pages in my book, The Body Electronics Fundamentals. There's an index in the back. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what page it is, but just look it up. Just look up XO factor in the back, and there'll be a couple of pages that will go into the actual details here. But the bottom line is this substance is in milk, and once the milk's been homogenized, then the substance very readily passes out into the bloodstream and irritates the artery walls, and it basically starts to break down some of the connective structure of the artery walls. And the plaque and cholesterol buildup and all the rest that you get in the walls of the arteries is nothing more than is a scab, really. I mean, it's basically the body trying to hold itself together. I mean, have you ever seen a scab form someplace on your arm or leg or whatever where you didn't have a cut? I mean, in other words, does a scab ever form in an area that hasn't been injured, that doesn't have some sort of lesion? No. I mean, a scab forms because your body's trying to patch itself back together there, and it's the same thing with the the plaque and cholesterol buildup in the arteries. It's a scab. And so the surgeons and the cardiologists and all the rest are looking at the scab as if the scab's the problem, and they're totally ignoring the fact that the scab wouldn't be forming if there wasn't some sort of lesion there. That'd be like, focusing on the fact that I have scabs in my arm rather than trying to figure out how I've been cutting myself so often so that I'm getting the scabs. It's about the same level of logic there. Basically, you don't form a scab unless you have a problem, and so in a typical medical fashion, they're looking at the symptom rather than looking at what is actually causing the symptom in the first place. Okay. At any rate, number 4, essential fatty acids are necessary for the development and function of the human brain. Number 5, essential fatty acids are necessary for the proper function of vision, the nervous system, the adrenal glands, and the testes, playing a vital role in sperm formation and conception. Number 6, essential fatty acids boost metabolism, metabolic rate, energy production, and oxygen uptake. I might add that one of the things that we'll be getting into a little bit later today will be oxygen. And a situation that you should all be aware of is that virtually all of us are very poorly oxygenated down at the cellular level. Virtually everybody, and we'll cover this in greater detail next week when we start looking at the iris and well, actually at the sclera, and seeing the signs there that would indicate an oxygen deficiency. But it's important for you to realize that the essential fatty acids are involved in every single phase of oxygen utilization in the body, from the lungs all the way out to the cells. A lot of people, feel like if they're poorly oxygenated, that the way to go about it is to put more oxygen into the system. And that's certainly valid. I mean, certainly putting more oxygen into the system is a good idea. But just consider this. You breathe out enough oxygen that mouth-to-mouth works, right? In other words, your exhalation has enough oxygen in it to keep somebody else alive. So obviously the solution to being better oxygenated is not just putting more oxygen into the system, it's increasing your own ability to utilize the oxygen that's already there. And one of the nutrients or two of the nutrients that will play an extremely key role in increasing your ability to utilize oxygen will be the essential fatty acids, your omega-3 and omega-6. And this is one of the many reasons why the flax oil is so effective in cancer treatment and working with the immune system and many, many other types of disorders, is because one of the great benefits of taking the flax oil is that it actually increases the oxygen levels within the tissues, because basically the essential fatty acids are going to improve your body's ability to utilize oxygen. Number 7, essential fatty acids, particularly omega-3, have been shown to decrease the growth of cancer cells, candida, and various anaerobic organisms destructive to the health of the body. And this is for the same reason that we've just been talking about. I mean, if you increase the oxygen levels in the tissues through the use of the essential fatty acids, how is that going to affect the anaerobic type organisms in the system? Well, if you get more oxygen in there, they don't do real well, right? So you're going to start to get rid of the anaerobic things. What type of an environment is a cancer cell like? High oxygen or low oxygen? Does anybody know? A cancer cell thrives in a low oxygen environment, and it really doesn't do well in a high oxygen environment. So one of the other ways in which the flax oil or the essential fatty acids would benefit anybody with cancer is simply, again, by increasing the level of oxygen in the tissues, which is very, very lethal to the cancer cell and wonderful for your healthy cells.
For those of you who are interested in beauty, the flax oil is really excellent for your skin, because I've known people that have very, very dry skin. Within a week of taking the flax oil, their skin is just like silky smooth, and it's got a sheen to it. And I noticed it within my own skin. I started taking the flax oil, and my skin just improved tremendously.
Okay. Okay. When I was just talking about the cancer cell there, let's look at this in a little bit more depth. The average. Well, you want to look at the cells, or you want to look more at the bacteria, or you want to look at both?
Are you ready? Okay, just don't turn us off. We're going to get into some facts that are little known, that go completely contrary to the traditional teachings of the medical schools. I have been guilty myself of scoffing at my myology teacher in chiropractic college when I went to school there at Western States College of Chiropractic. When many of these things that we're going to talk about now, he told the class, and it was so ridiculous to me that I just literally said, what in the world am I doing sitting here listening to this rubbish? And later on, many, many years later, I found out he was spot on. But I couldn't accept it because it went contrary to everything that I had learned as a younger man out of all the textbooks that I had read and studied, and I scoffed at what I now fully endorse and accept. Now we're going to go into this carefully. We're going to use up some valuable time, but it'll save us from doing it next weekend. But I think under the circumstances with this oxygen content, if Doug, if you don't mind if I take the lead here for a moment. We're talking about cancerous tissue. We talked earlier about the congestion that exists at the cell level, where, as you will know from physiology and anatomy, that the cell is fed by nutrients which move from the capillary through what we call the interstitial fluid into and around the cell structure itself. And this interstitial fluid also allows the metabolic byproducts of the cell to move away from the cell and out to be cleansed through the lymphatic fluid, through the lymphatic channels that all this interstitial fluid eventually goes out. The mucoprotein was the conjugate between the undigested carbohydrate and the undigested protein, which blocks the cell from getting nutrients and blocks also the cell from eliminating its toxins. And therefore the cell becomes sick. Now when the cell becomes sick, all right, we think of a cell subdividing in the body, and we think of it as spreading as cancer. Now what they have found, which the Japanese medical doctors have put forth, they started questioning everything that had been done in the medical field in the United States and not trusting the Americans. They did their own tests. And the first thing they wanted to study was the origin of the red blood cells, wherein the teaching of the Americans was that this came from the red bone marrow. And it's still taught that it's red bone marrow. And the Australians have followed suit that the red blood vessels or the red blood cells come from the red bone marrow, which is no longer true. What they have found, you ready, is that the tests that were given to a number of people to find where the source of the red blood cell came from was done under a fasting period. During a fast, the red blood cells do not and are not manufactured. But they found out that during a fast, the red blood cells that were stored in the red bone marrow, in order to keep the number of red blood cells constant in the bloodstream, the red blood cells were pulled out of the red bone marrow and began to honeycomb the red bone marrow where it was stored, and then balancing out the number of red blood cells in the bloodstream to keep the bloodstream, shall we say, healthy. And they discovered then that the red blood cells were rapidly being depleted from the red bone marrow and not being manufactured in the red bone marrow because of this honeycomb effect in the red bone marrow. And they said, okay, then where is the red blood vessels, the red blood cells, where is it manufactured? Because it wasn't being manufactured in the red bone marrow. It was stored in the red bone marrow and then utilized and pulled out of the red bone marrow to keep the balance going in the bloodstream. They found out that the red blood cells was manufactured in tiny hollow areas in the small intestine area. Now this is why with all of our leukemia patients, all we do is correct the digestion. We take care of the assimilation factor so the body can assimilate nutrients, and the leukemia, in all cases, disappear. Now, I'm looking back, Doug, over many years. Have we ever lost a leukemia patient who stayed on the program? I can't think of one. I can think of thousands that were healed of leukemia who had all of the symptoms of leukemia, who had these large purpura, these large blue spots on the skin, and bleeding from those purpura in many cases, where they had the extreme tiredness, what we call bone-shelling tiredness, where their gums bled, and where under blood tests they had the signs of leukemia. Now, many of these people are now totally free of leukemia. In fact, all of them, to my knowledge, that have been on the program. And we haven't lost a one, to my knowledge. Are you hearing me? Now, these are people where we get them off of the red meat. We get them on a program where all of the nutrients are not only digested, but assimilated by the small intestine, at which time the small intestine begins to regenerate the red blood cells, which are converted into the white blood cells, healthy white blood cells, and the body starts to heal properly, and every symptom of leukemia goes. It's a matter of digestion and assimilation. The Japanese medical doctors have discovered this. Now, what is more interesting is they found out that within a test tube, a cancer cell will subdivide. That's what they call in vitro. But in the human body, the cancer cell does not subdivide. Are you ready for this? It has now been found that the red blood cell, which does not have a nucleus, the red blood cell does not have a nucleus, but it will take on the energy by what we call entrainment in the area in which it is found. So if a red blood cell goes into an area that is dominated by the energy of cancer, it'll take on the characteristics of that cancer cell and will move into that area through greater blood flow, which everyone knows that if you've got a cancer, you have an aggravated blood flow into that area, whether it's a brain tumor or a cancer in the abdomen, and the red blood cells flow into the area and take on the energy by entrainment of that sick cell, and cancer is formed. And so if you have sick cells which are deprived of oxygen in the physical body, in the area where you have your anaerobic condition, the cells are dying, the red blood cells come into that area where the cells are dying and take on the energy of dying cells, and you have all of a sudden the proliferation or the growth of a cancerous condition. So one of the first things we do in our work, we flood the body with ozone therapy or different forms of stabilized oxygen. And we get the oxygen into the body, and if we stay away from all cooked food and eat fresh, raw, organically grown, hopefully, vegetarian food. And by the way, Linda, do we have that material on organic food sources? Do we have that available to pass out? Okay, if you haven't got that, get it from Linda in the back, please. Okay? So, these red blood cells, by entrainment, take on the energy which we'll call a morphogenetic field, which determines the very structure of matter itself. This is how the human body heals and works. You take the blockage out of the morphogenetic field, and the body returns to its perfect DNA structure. You take an energy pattern of disease and destruction to the human body, the morphogenetic field will then change and will create a disease pattern within the body. The red blood cell, being a carte blanche, that red blood cell will then form a nucleus which will be matching the pattern of the disease symptom that it is surrounded, and you have a cancer growth. Now, Anita, anything you want to add there? Doug, anything you want to add there? Go for it.
The observation has been made by many people over the years that if you have an individual, for example, with cancer, with a tumor in the body, or if you have an individual who has a proliferation of different types of unhealthy bacteria and viruses, it's been long observed that if you introduce certain types of substances into the body, like you get extra oxygen in there, you get certain types of minerals, enzymes, essential fatty acids, and various other types of nutrients, it's been observed over the years that in many cases, if you do things just right, you're going to get a reduction in the tumor mass, or you're going to get a disappearance of the various unhealthy bacteria and viruses that have been proliferating in that individual. I think the assumption has generally been made that somehow or another what's happened is the cancer has been killed, and or that the various bacteria and viruses have been killed off somehow or another, whether by the nutrients you're putting in there or whether by the body's own immune system. And this is not actually the case. It's what you'll read in most books. I mean, most of the time if you hear about a cancer disappearing from the body, what we're told is that the cancer is actually being destroyed, that it's being just kind of, the individual cancer cells are being killed, whether it's by the chemotherapy or radiation, or whether it's by the body's own immune system, or by whatever means, or we're told that the bacteria and viruses are being killed. The reality is actually quite different. The microorganisms that exist within the body, much like the cells that exist within the body, are going to basically entrain to whatever the energy pattern is within the body, to whatever the environment is within the system.
Listen.
In other words, the
Right on.
the microorganisms that you have, the bacteria and viruses and so forth, are simply going to be a result of the environment that exists within your body.
Repeat, Doug. I mean, this is such an important concept. Slow down and repeat that.
The various bacteria and viruses that exist within the body are going to be the direct result of the environment that exists within the body. And what happens if you notice a situation where, say, you oxygenate an individual and a bunch of viruses or bacteria disappear, what's actually happened is not that these bacteria and viruses have been killed, but what's actually happened is that you've changed the environment by introducing a lot of oxygen, for example, and as a result of that, the bacteria and viruses simply change into other forms. And if you've done something to actually uplift the environment within the body, what typically happens is the bacteria and viruses change from forms that we would consider to be unhealthy to forms that we would consider to be beneficial within the body.
Bottom line, many of your great, what I would call scientists, did a tremendous amount of research on what is now accepted among the advanced circles, what we call pleomorphism. Wilhelm Reich did the following. He took E. coli, which is normally found in human fecal matter, okay? Everyone has it. But he took and cultured a pure culture of E. coli. And if you understand bacteriology, we used to take in our bacteriology work, would take and would form what they call a bell-shaped curve on top of an agar-agar solution, for example. And it'd have a bell-shaped curve and be a pure culture of one type of a bacteria. Okay, now what Royal Rife did, he took this pure culture of E. coli, he changed the medium in which that E. coli existed, and suddenly that entire culture of E. coli changed through the pleomorphic concept to meet the requirements of the new medium, and it turned into a typhoid bacteria. And then this typhoid bacteria was then turned into a pure culture by just leaving the culture alone and letting the original E. coli convert to the typhoid. Then he added a little iron. Ready? And then he added a little bit of iron to the culture. And the typhoid then converted over to what happens when you get an iron nail in your leg? Tetanus. You go down and get a tetanus shot. That's exactly what this stuff turned into. The typhoid turned into tetanus. And then he had a pure culture of tetanus. And then he took that pure culture and put that into an original solution which had the E. coli, and the tetanus converted over again then to the E. coli. And there was no more typhoid, no more tetanus, but the original E. coli emerged then with the original material. And the concept then began to form that it isn't the bacteria that causes the disease in the human body, but it is the medium, or what the French will call the word terrain. It is the terrain or the medium which causes the various bacteria to form, which causes the disease symptoms. Now this is exciting because this is what people like Gaston Nassance has discovered up in Quebec in Canada. This is what other great researchers are now finding, where there is so much literature now available to fully document the concept of pleomorphism that anything other than pleomorphism is an ancient, archaic, and outdated concept. In other words, you don't catch a bug, which we've all been taught to give us a disease. We only get a disease if the environment is right for the bacteria to change to a certain type of material or certain type of bacteria, which will then have certain metabolic byproducts of that bacteria to give us certain symptomology. Are you with me on this? This is the simplicity. You don't get a bug or a disease from a bug. You have to have the condition within your body where that bug can proliferate. Example, if any of you are trained in any medical philosophy, and if any of you are nurses, you will know that the human lungs, every human has every single form of disease in the human lungs, and every little sac in the human body. This is a known and established fact. Why don't these germs spread and cause disease in the human body if they're already there? Why? It's because the medium is not there for their proliferation. Now, this is an exciting little situation, folks. And I hope you can understand that concept, because we have to let go of all these old concepts of the germ theory. The American Medical Association back in the 30s had a big war going on between the disciples, shall we say, of Royal Rife and those that were the proponents of the germ theory. Very narrow margin of voting. The germ theory won out, and Royal Rife was put on the back burner in disgrace. With all of the work that he had done on the universal microscope that you've all heard of, and the work that he had done on the pleomorphism concept, that is the most revolutionary concept of our time and is yet to come into widespread acceptance. Okay? Doug.
You can say on the one hand, as John has just said, that basically the germ theory is sheer nonsense. You don't get sick because you get a particular bacteria or virus. You get sick because you've already made yourself sick. You've created the right environment, and as a result of that environment, which we create through our own bad habits, then a particular microbe is going to proliferate in the system. Turn it around and look at it the other way. You don't overcome cancer by killing the cancer. you know, by killing off the cancer cells. That's the way the doctors are trying to do it with the chemotherapy and the radiation and the surgery and all the rest. They're trying to attack the cancer cells. You don't get over a virus or a bacteria by killing the virus or the bacteria. Don't worry about that. All you have to do is create a proper environment within your system through good habits. And what's going to happen is the cancer cells are going to do what? They're going to change. They're not going to be cancer cells anymore. They're simply going to change into healthy tissue again.
They are simply overwhelmed by healthy entrainment, and the cancer cells convert over to a healthy cell.
They'll follow the crowd and become healthy cells. And it's the same thing with the bacteria and the viruses. What are they going to do when you create a healthy environment within the body? Well, they're just going to change into other types of bacteria and viruses that are good for you. So you don't have to worry about killing anything here. Just create a good environment, and you'll have nothing but blessings within your body, basically.
We have to look at the main cause. Now remember the mental factor? The thought patterns that we hold in our mind will determine the morphogenetic field of our body, which then in turn controls and creates the physical outer manifestation on what's going on in our body. So if we have a cancer, it's not all oxygen and nutrition and what have you, because the cancer will be also an outer manifestation of a possible thought form which determines the morphogenetic field, which determines the outer manifestation of the cancer. So you have to look at the thought form too, because we have had numerous cases when people are able to get rid of a certain thought form that they have been nourishing and holding all the time, like they're always talking about my cancer, and then they even have the thought pattern, well, my cancer is now going away, but they're still putting the first premise there, my cancer. You follow what I'm saying? And the thought form then determines the morphogenetic field which manifests in the physical body. We have to take a look at the word patterns very carefully and the thought patterns carefully and create and see in our mind, get this now, we have to create and see in our mind an absolute perfect outer condition where we're not denying that we have a cancer, but we're no longer focusing our attention on the fact that we have a cancer. We're not resisting it any further, which gives it life. We're letting it be, and we're simply focusing on the perfection. And then the outer manifestation will take on the picture of the new perfection that we're holding in our mind, and the morphogenetic field changes, and the cancer goes into what we call remission. Because our thought patterns, no matter how good our diet is, no matter how much point holding we have, if our thought patterns are not accurate and not spot on, then we'll continue to manifest the cancers in our body. You with me on this? Any questions on that? The thought pattern comes first. That controls the morphogenetic field, which determines the outer structure of matter itself. That's exciting. Are you thinking that we're just absolutely crazy people up here, or do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay, crazy people, that's okay. Okay, Doug?
Okay, number 8, I guess. Essential fatty acids are precursors to hormone-like substances known as the prostaglandins. There are 3 main groups of these known as the PG1s, PG2s, and PG3s. Prostaglandins govern platelet stickiness in the blood, arterial muscle tone, inflammatory response, sodium excretion through the kidneys, and immune function. Number 9, PG1s and PG2s are derived from the omega-6, while PG3s come from omega-3. This will seem a bit dry, but this is actually quite important here. a little bit oily. PG2s are triggered by stress, and they will increase platelet stickiness, constrict arteries, increase inflammation, decrease sodium excretion, and inhibit immune function. Now you'll remember the PG2s come from which essential fatty acid? From the omega-6. So if you look at those different things, a lot of you might think, well, why would I want to make my blood more sticky, my arteries constricted, the inflamed things in the body, decrease sodium excretion, and inhibit immune function? Those would seem like pretty silly things to do. But just think of like a flight or fight type response. I mean, imagine yourself running through your life or whatever. There's going to be situations in which you really need to pretty much divert all your energy to your legs. And, when you're if you're running through the jungle away from a lion, you're not too concerned about your immune system at that point. You want all your power down in your legs. So there is a situation in which it is actually beneficial to the body. What we'll call it a stressful situation. There is a situation in which you'd want your arteries nice and constricted, and you'd want your if you just got your arm gashed open, it might be good for your blood to be a little bit sticky so it would clot up. I mean, there are situations in which these are beneficial things. The difficulty is that we get into that type of a situation and we're not able to get out of it. Let me read the rest of this and then I'll explain that. Under normal circumstances, the PG3s would keep the PG2s in check. Now, where do the PG3s come from? Okay, from omega-3. Were the production of PG2s to go unchecked, serious consequences could result. Now, what you'll find with most people is most people have a good amount of omega-6, but they don't have enough of the omega-3, okay? So what's going to happen is most people are going to be they're going to be able to produce the PG2s, right, because that comes from the omega-6, but they're not going to be able to produce a lot of the PG3s because they don't have enough of the omega-3. So anybody here have any stress in their life? Okay, so what's going to happen when you have stress in your life? What's going to happen? Well, go back to number 8. You're going to get your blood platelets are going to get sticky, right? Or actually right there at the beginning of number 9. You'll have an increase in platelet stickiness, so your blood's going to get all thick. You're going to have constricted arteries, so what's happening to your blood pressure? Blood pressure is going up. You're going to have increased inflammation, which if you want to get medical about it is pretty much anything that ends in itis. Anybody here ever have an itis of any sort? Arthritis or pancreatitis or anything else? Okay, so these are all the inflammatory tissue diseases. Decreased sodium excretion and inhibited immune function. And of course, if your immune system's down, you're talking all sorts of things, including cancer and lupus and all sorts of other diseases. So who's going to be very prone to that type of thing? Well, anybody that's under stress who doesn't have enough what? Omega-3s. Does that fit the bill of anybody here? Well, you're probably all under stress, and probably a lot of you aren't taking your flax oil, so it probably fits most of the people here. So you're going to leave yourself wide open to a wide range of diseases. And one of the main reasons for this will be a simple nutritional deficiency of your omega-3. Because you get into the stressful situations, your body starts creating all of the PG2s, and even though you're no longer running through the jungle away from a lion or whatever the case, or maybe running through the office away from your boss or whatever the case may be, if you don't have the omega-3, you're not able to produce the PG3s, which would basically reverse the process. The PG3s are going to decrease the stickiness of the platelets. They're going to increase your immune system. They're going to increase the sodium excretion through the kidneys. They're going to reverse the inflammation of the tissues. They're going to unconstrict the blood vessels. So basically what happens is if you're not getting enough of the omega-3s, your body basically is in a stress mode all the time, which leaves you wide open to all sorts of diseases.
Question. Now, where does the flax oil fit in here?
Okay, where the flax oil fits, well, orally, I like to take it, but
That's one way.
If you read a little bit further on here, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 is very, very important. Basically, the ideal ratio for omega-3 to omega-6 should be around, the ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 should be roughly 2 to 1. That's about what you want, about twice as much omega-6 to omega-3. You shouldn't really be any higher than about 4 or 5 to 1. Most people are up around 20 to 1. In other words, most people are getting massive amounts of omega-6 and very, very little omega-3. And if you start to look through some of the tables and charts that are available in a lot of your nutrition books, and you start to look for good sources of the 2 essential fatty acids, you'll find that there's plenty of different nuts and seeds and foods that have lots of omega-6 in them. But there's very, very little that really is much of a good source of omega-3. Most of your seed and nut oils have maybe anywhere from 30 to 70% omega-6 and less than 1% omega-3. So if you're trying to get back to that 2-to-1 ratio or whatever, you're actually making things worse by taking like sunflower oil or safflower oil or corn oil or any of these other oils. Olive oil doesn't have much of either. It's got about 8% omega-6 and almost no omega-3. It's mostly the omega-9. But it's still a horrible ratio. It's still way more of the omega-6 than omega-3. And bottom line here is about the only thing out there that actually has more omega-3 than omega-6 that I know of that's typically available is going to be your flax oil, which is up around 55 to 65% omega-3, about 55 to 65% omega-3, and between 15 to 25% omega-6. So if you're looking at trying to get a lot of essential fatty acids, but in particular getting, trying to reverse the distortion where you've been getting way too much 6 and not enough 3, I got to make sure be careful how I pronounce that depending on what country I'm in. Way too much 6. At any rate, you got to get something that's going to have a lot of omega-3 and by comparison a lesser amount of the omega-6. And really the only the only typically available oil that will do that is going to be your flax oil. So this is why this is a real must for all of us here. You'll get a certain amount of, like, flax oil, like I said, is up around 55 to 65% omega-3. By comparison, about the next best thing you're going to find is maybe down around 10 or 11% omega-3. And that's if you're lucky. That's only a couple of things like walnut or pumpkin seed oil, which are...
How about coconut?
Coconut's got, I think, less than 1%. It's not a huge amount. You'll be very hard pressed to find anything else that's over 1% omega-3. There's very few sources of it. And if you read down to the next one here, excess non-essential fatty acids compete for a vital enzyme known as D6D. Thus, an excess of non-essential fatty acids can result in a functional deficiency of VFAs. Basically, all that's saying is that if you have a huge amount of fat in your diet that's non-essential, then even if you're getting enough of your essential fatty acids in an absolute sense, you might still be deficient because your body can't use them because it doesn't have enough enzymes to do the job. So you have to be careful not just of your ratio of omega-6 and omega-3, you have to be very careful of your ratio of the non-essential stuff to the essential stuff. Like, for example, if you're consuming huge quantities of butter, which is mainly non-essential saturated fats, you may well be using up most of your enzymes just consuming the butter, and so even if you have enough flax oil, your body may not use it properly as a result of a shortfall of enzymes and an excess of non-essential fatty acids. So bottom line is you need something that's high in essential fatty acids and in particular very high in the omega-3. And there isn't anything out there other than flax oil that's readily available that will do the job.
Let me give you a little illustration. In the Cook Islands, where we have our clinic, I remember one lady has no income, but she fishes, she has coconuts, she has chickens, and she has everything she needs to eat. And so she's always got more food than enough, and she's feeding the entire neighborhood. And yet she has no money as such. She ended up with what we call gout. And the doctors gave her free drugs, for her gout. Her legs were all swollen up, her feet were swollen up, and she was in a lot of pain. And she had been in pain with this gout for many years. What did we do for her? We put her on what they call the jelly meat of the coconut, which has 1% essential fatty acids, and a good ratio of the omega-6 to the omega-3. I believe that within 2 weeks of being on the coconut, 6 coconuts a day, eating the jelly meat and drinking the coconut juice, that in about 2 weeks the pain disappeared in her feet for the first time. For months. The swelling went down, And within 6 weeks, she was running around like a little spring chicken. Now, the interesting part is that she didn't have any more gout for several years. We've been over there now for quite a few years. And every time we see her, she doesn't say much. She doesn't speak much English, but she's always just, I'm fine, no pain. And this is a kind of a beautiful thing that we find. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of money if you eat right, especially in the tropics, because you have your papaya, you have your orange juice, you've got things, and everyone has, all you have to do is forage a little bit, and you have all the bananas you want for your potassium, you have all the oranges you need for your vitamin C, you have all the vegetables you need for your vitamins, and it's just a marvelous situation. And so you don't have to have a whole lot of money to eat right. We talked about the minerals. They take, one night I was praying about this sort of thing and figuring, hey, these minerals from the States are expensive. And it's expensive. That's more than, one bottle of that doggone stuff is more than what many of the people have for money to spend for a month. They can't afford supplementation. What do we do? And so as shown to me during the night, you take the coconut that is raised in the sandy soil near the ocean, right next to the ocean. And you take the coconut shell, which is chock full of minerals, you make a charcoal out of it by putting it into a can, driving out with the heat the volatile material, and you have left a charcoal. You grind up that charcoal into a face powder, and you take a tablespoon of that 3 times a day. Not a tablespoon, a serving spoon, 3 times a day. You take that serving spoon heaping 3 times a day, and there's your minerals that you need for your body, so that body electronics works. Okay? You've got everything else in your fresh and raw food, and people get well. And we have been using that in Tanzania. Doug took it down to Tanzania. The people use it. They get results with it. We've had good results with it in the Cook Islands on the people that have no funds. It just takes a little while to make the charcoal, but what they have is time, and they have all of their land. They're land rich. You with me on this? This is important. And so when they use these things plus the essential fatty acids from the coconut, my golly, what happens to them? You have some of the people with the most beautiful skin in the world among the Polynesian people. What do they put on their skin? They take the coconut cream, put it out in the sun, and get coconut oil in the sun. They put that on their skin, and there's your essential fatty acids.
Something that will also work, which I've suggested they do in Tanzania because it's very readily available, is a good source of your essential fatty acids, including a good amount of the omega-3, are your pumpkin or squash seeds. And especially in a tropical area, those are incredibly abundant. I mean, pumpkins and squash. Anybody can grow those. They're not hard to grow. And here, a place like this, you could grow them year-round. So if you want a good source of your essential fatty acids, just grow pumpkins and other types of squash, and then just take the seeds. And one of the things you have to do with seed, what do you have to do with a seed before you eat it? Well, you don't have to all the way sprout it, but you need to soak it. Like soak it overnight or soak it for 24 hours to deactivate the enzyme inhibitors. You'll digest it a lot better. But basically for anybody here, for example, who doesn't, for example, if you don't feel like you can afford to, go through a few bottles a month of the flax oil, just use pumpkin seeds or even flax seeds and soak them and slightly germinate them, and then just consume those, and that'll give you plenty of essential fatty acids at very little cost. So like John says, I mean, there's always ways to do it, especially if you've got time. There's things that you can do. So, question? Well, just for the mic, just so it's on the tape.
Just the slightly germinating, is that like sprouting?
You don't necessarily have to sprout things to the point where they're actually growing and all that, but soaking it enough to deactivate the enzyme inhibitors. The exact amount of time is going to vary depending upon the temperature. I mean, the warmer it is, the quicker things happen.
Right.
And also on the type of seed. Some seeds, like say in a temperature like this, there would be some seeds that you might need to soak them for a full 24 or even 36 hours, whereas there might be other seeds where it might only be like 12 hours or so before they start to germinate. Some things will be even less than that. So you're going to have to experiment a little bit, and maybe get some charts and books on the subject. But generally, for most things, somewhere between like 12 to 24 hours will be sufficient. If in doubt, go a little bit longer to make sure that you've gotten the job done. So 24 hours isn't bad. Once you've soaked something, though, it's quite perishable. It's not something you can keep. You need to use it up right away, because it's not going to, even refrigerated, it won't keep very long. So.
Thank you.
Okay, number 11. In the November 1986 Journal of the National Cancer Institute, research indicated that omega-3 and one of its derivatives, as well as 3 of the derivatives of omega-6, were seen to selectively destroy human cancer cells. Of course, from what we've just read, we know they're really not destroying the cancer cells, are they? Just maybe getting them to change into something else. Of course, this is probably done in a test tube, so maybe it really did destroy them. But at any rate, we're seen to selectively destroy human cancer cells in tissue culture without damaging normal cells. Bottom line, in your own body, create a good, healthy environment, and one of the things that you'll need to do to create a good, healthy environment within your body is make sure you've got all both the essential fatty acids. Number 12, Dr. Joanna Budwig, a German MD and biochemist, discovered that the blood of cancer patients was deficient in essential fatty acids. A yellow-green pigment was found in place of the normal red blood pigment or hemoglobin. Along with certain dietary improvements, she gave her patients 3 tablespoons of fresh flax oil daily as a means of getting essential fatty acids into the body, flax oil being 55 to 65% omega-3 and 15 to 25% omega-6. On this program, which included no other supplements, she found that within 3 months, the yellow-green pigment was replaced by red and the cancer disappeared. What Dr. Budwig uses is a combination of flax oil for the essential fatty acids and a substance called quark, which is somewhat similar to cottage cheese, which is rich in what are called sulfur-rich proteins. And by having this oil-protein combination where you're getting your essential amino acids and your essential fatty acids, she's had phenomenal results for many decades in Germany, where there have been thousands and thousands of people that have gotten rid of cancer and other degenerative illnesses on a program that basically is a whole foods diet with abundant amounts of the quark and the flax oil or linseed oil. And she's well known in Germany for her work there.
Questions before we go on?
When the people were here from Grainfields this morning, they said that in the powder of the pre-digested protein, there was some ground up flax seed. Is that sufficient, or would taking the oil supplementally also be necessary?
Technically, the seed was a linseed.
Okay.
It's a linseed, which when you extract the oil from the linseed, that's known as flax oil. Now that's what was in the material. Now the flax oil is there, but if you go back to the literature, about 67% of a germinated flax seed or linseed, that will give you about 3 tablespoons, will give you 2 tablespoons full of flax oil, because it's about 67% flax oil. So if you can take about 3 big tablespoons of your linseed, germinate that overnight, or soak it to bring it to the point of germination, put it in a blender and use it, it's much more nutritious because it's fresh, it's raw, there's no oxygen destruction of it, there's no light destruction of it, and you can use that in a blender for a smoothie or for a salad dressing, and you have your source of 2 tablespoons 3 times a day is what you need, or serving spoons 3 times a day for enough flax oil to get the job done.
Thank you.
Okay? Does that help? Anita?
Yeah, by the way, it's delicious. The flax oil is delicious as a salad dressing. I mix it with a little lemon and Celtic salt, and it's just very delicious. You can also put it on other foods, but do not put it on hot food. If you put it on things that are cool, you'll find different ways to use it. It's very delicious. Okay, now a formula we talked about very briefly yesterday was the Schweitzer formula, and I'm going to go through that now. This is compiled by Dr. John. The Schweitzer formula is a mineral biological toxoid. It's on page 43. Everybody got it? Okay. The Schweitzer formula is a mineral biological toxoid developed in 1915 at the Speyer House Institute for Thermotherapy in Frankfurt, Germany, and sold throughout the world since 1920. It is not a drug or a chemical. Number 2. One must have studied in-depth molecular biology to understand that the Schweitzer formula is an anionic surfactant containing an ionization constant based on Planck's constant, Einstein's unified field theory, and Professor Paul Ehrlich's side chain theory of immunology. Okay. Immunology. This is the secret of the amazing curative and preventive powers of Schweitzer formula. Number 3. It has been established that all disease can be cured by thermotherapy, which is anelectric, that is non-frictional. Electric friction damages the functioning of the complex molecules which compose the individual human cells by causing an imbalance in their natural magnetic dipole moment. Schweitzer formula stops the frictional damaging heat by neutralizing the disease-causing positive ionization with negative ions while supplying oxygen to the cells of the human body, resulting in natural infrared heat of the cell molecules and purified blood. Healthy red blood. Number 4. The chemical formulation of Schweitzer formula is C14H10BO72 zinc, Zn. The chemical name is 4-deorthotic oxybenzoic acid zinc. Okay. In the Schweitzer formula is a zinc boron cell in the molecular biological field. The toxicity is removed in the growing crystal, but it still retains its bacterial toxin. This zinc boron cell is a hydrated magnetic crystal that calcifies into infrared heat independent of the field of synthetic petrochemical medicine and general knowledge. Schweitzer formula is a specific against all gram-positive organisms. Number 5.
Did you hear that? What does it mean? What does it mean if you've got a gram-positive, you see it in the slide, colored in the slide, a pathological organism, what does it do? It creates a situation in the body where that gram-positive bacteria cannot proliferate. This is one of the greatest disinfectants in the world, which doesn't kill the bacteria. It renders them incapable of spreading. And so you'll find this was used for years as the best disinfectant, a medical disinfectant in the world.
Okay. Number 5, Schweitzer formula is an electric infrared heat caused by negative ions traveling at the speed of light. These are non-frictional bationic wet electrons.
Enjoy.
Schweitzer formula is a true osmotic solution. Number 6, Schweitzer formula is a universal disinfectant which stops unhealthy germs in the human body, but does not damage or kill the cells of the human body. It is a universal solvent which thins and purifies the bloodstream of the human body and precipitates impurities from the cytoplasm of the human cells of the body. When the oxygen level of the bloodstream is over 85%, then anaerobic bacteria and viruses are destroyed. Oxygen therapy has shown conclusively that A, B, and C forms of hepatitis are destroyed, as well as HIV-3 virus, period. Oxygen therapy along with the Schweitzer formula make a very good team. Number 7, spray the Schweitzer formula locally on the skin. Every drop of the spray mist contains a pure zinc boron crystal which is absorbed through the skin into the blood. The pure mineral zinc boron cell is necessary for pure blood and pure cytoplasm of tissue cells in the human body. The Schweitzer formula contains a pure basic zinc carbonate enzyme which is necessary to maintain the pH value of the blood at 7.3 in order that life-giving oxidation reduction cycles of the heat of the human body takes place in the tissue cells and not in the bloodstream. Number 8, Schweitzer formula correctly thins the blood and helps form healthy red blood cells. It heals burns of the skin, stops the pain, blistering, and scarring of the skin tissue. Schweitzer formula heals radiation burns of deeper cell tissues and the bone marrow, which is caused by radioactive elements in the water, air, and food.
Hearing that? This is the research done on it. For radiation fallout, this is something to consider.
Number 9, Schweitzer formula stops the growth of anaerobic bacteria, fungi, and viruses because it is a true disinfectant. Hospitals and doctors know that antiseptics and antibiotics kill germs and healthy cells of the human body, resulting in new unhealthy germs which the antibiotics cannot kill. There is widespread acceptance of biological pleomorphism, which is the activity of a germ changing to a new form to adapt to its new environment. Thus, when one changes the cellular environment with antibiotics, then new germs develop with new qualities, which increases the problem. Number 10, Schweitzer formula is a deodorant and mouthwash which absorbs an odor but keeps a natural fragrance. It stops acne when sprayed on and left open to the air. It stops rashes and athlete's foot. Number 11, it stops urogenitary rashes, itching, and all venereal disease when aided with approximate methods of oxygen therapy. Schweitzer formula should be used for all feminine hygiene. Use diluted with pure distilled water for a douche. Number 12, Schweitzer formula purifies the blood and cells of the toxic alkaloids of alcohol and drug addiction. Use 20 drops to a glass of pure distilled water and drink. Spray on head, back of neck, and spinal cord. Schweitzer formula heals the ulcers of varicose veins. Spray on and do not cover. Varicose veins will gradually shrink and disappear. It heals the scarring in arteries and veins and thus aids in the healing of scarring in heart attacks. Schweitzer Formula has been a powerful aid in helping to cure cancer naturally by helping to balance and purify the body. 15. Schweitzer Formula increases the immune response by laboratory analysis with positive indication of increased phagocytic cell activity in destruction of bacteria and other foreign substances. Other germicides kill bacteria and have a detrimental suppressing effect on surrounding tissues with no immune system increase. Number 6. Schweitzer Formula increases the capillary growth and capillary network in injured areas to help distribute nutrients to tissues to aid healing and restoration of normal activity. 17. Schweitzer Formula increases fibroblastic and lymphocytic activity with increased epithelial cell growth, resulting in rapid healing of injured tissue. Number 18. Schweitzer Formula reduces scar tissue when applied topically and internally. It reduces age pigmentation when applied topically. It increases temperature, hypothermia in an abnormal tissue growth. It is a superior stimulant to healing and an aid to tissue regeneration and growth.
You hear this? We have used this for years. And this has such marvelous results on dissolving scar tissue on the body that eventually the scar tissue totally disappears, no matter how bad the burns have been or the scar tissue, and everything returns to its full normal function. Anita can tell you a lot of the stories with different people, like let's say they burned the side of their leg on the exhaust from a motorcycle. And you've seen a lot of people with motorcycle burns on the side of their leg. Now, those are deep burns. And yet, using the Schweitzer, these things have healed up where there's not so much as a scar. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, continue on.
Number 19. For over 70 years in the use of the Schweitzer Formula, there have been no contraindications observed. Used topically during a niacin flush, very positive results have been observed in skin rejuvenation when used in conjunction with the Ray program of nutrient saturation and body electronics. Apparently, the Schweitzer Formula acts as a catalyst in helping to increase healing and regeneration if other basic nutrients are present, such as enzymes, colloidal minerals, natural vitamins, essential fatty acids, and the full range of natural amino acids. Number 20. Schweitzer Formula aids in the rebuilding and restructuring of tissues during the healing crisis and genetic restructuring. It penetrates through the skin and increases the oxygenation and circulation to the tissue, thereby improving the metabolic function, thus helping to smooth out wrinkles, increasing skin elasticity, and maintaining the ecology of the skin which is required for its proper functioning. It has been no secret that from World War II unto the present time, the American Medical Association and the large pharmaceutical companies have launched a never-ending campaign based upon their policy to advertise and sell their synthetic petrochemical drugs, to discredit the proven healing natural biologicals, or what is called traditional medicine. Traditional medicine is once again on the rise, wherein people are demanding, as is their inherent right, freedom of choice in health care, and it is a matter of time that people shall return to natural healing, which has been time proven to be of the greatest benefit to mankind. People all over the world are flocking to alternative medicine, as orthodox medicine has proved conclusively that drugs and surgery do not have all the answers, and people have found great help in alternative medicines, as well as returning to traditional medicines arising out of oneness with nature.
That's good. Now, this material here is absolutely essential because this is really a universal disinfectant for any type of a problem that you're going to be having on your skin, whether it be eczema, rashes, or areas where the skin will not heal. We've used it on open lesions. We've used this on all types of areas where people have really hurt themselves badly, and we just put the Schweitzer on it on a continual basis until the thing heals, like a severe burn. The Schweitzer just put on that material helps that to heal wonderfully. We don't know how long we're going to have this available to us, because the FDA has tried several different times to stop the manufacturing of it. And the people in the United States had to move from state to state to continue to manufacture it quietly and supply their suppliers. So this is becoming now a question as to how long we'll have that available, but we still have that at the present time. Yes.
Have you had experience using it with tropical ulcers and that the eating virus?
We have used it internally, and within about 3 days internally, for example, with gastric ulcers, the ulcers clear up. On the skin, any type of a problem that I have seen on the skin has healed up after a period of time with the problems with the that a person might have, like in the tropics, where they have all kinds of infections that come about. Now, we're in the Cook Islands. We're right in the middle of places where if there's an infection that can be had, we'll get it, and we deal with them all the time.
I would like to reiterate that it's very good for the immune system. What it does is it activates the white blood cells, so the immune system starts working.
This is one of the first things that we use to activate the immune system, and it works beautifully and is proven out conclusively with live blood cell analysis.
Psoriasis, they have on their skin. Would that heal that?
What kind of?
Is it psoriasis or?
The psoriasis?
Yeah.
It's helped tremendously with that, yes. Even with the vitiligo that some of you have on the skin with the little white spots with the pigment loss, even with the vitiligo, which is the little white spots on the skin due to, shall we say, deficiency in adrenal function. When we get the adrenal glands working properly, even these little white spots the pigment comes back and the white spots disappear. You've had people they look like a palomino pony, and with white spots everywhere, and these gradually clear up in reverse order to how they formed. So it's a wonderful thing. Now, I hope you understand the importance of a good immune system. The immune system is what we're looking at, and we're finding out there's a number of things that we have to deal with concerning the immune system. And in this particular book, I'd like you to read very carefully in detail the oxygen on page 38. And prior to that, you're going to have over on page number 33 the material on the mature green papaya. Now, the papaya is one thing. Kiwi fruit is another, which is very high in your actinidin, which is one of your proteolytic enzymes, where it's been proven that if you take the proteolytic enzyme into your system from either papaya, from the papain in the what they call the mature green papaya, or the ripe kiwi fruit, which is high in your actinidin, which is a proteolytic enzyme, that protease taken internally will increase the immune system up to sometimes as high as 2,000%. So for people with immune system problems, the ingestion of your papain in your mature green papaya or in your kiwi fruit, these will be quite helpful into reversing the downward trend in the functioning of the thymus gland and the immune system. So this is very, very important. How are we coming back there? Are we ready for a spot of, okay, let's take about a 15-minute break here, please, and take a few minutes and just get a little something. Move the bodies around so you don't fall asleep on me. Okay? That will be in response to your questions. And a lot of you have asked questions, and I have said, not now, let me have my break, as my fingers are full of that chocolate goodie, okay? And if I have been a little blunt with several of you by saying not now, guess what? I meant it. So forgive me for my bluntness here. Now's the time to ask the questions that you had. And we'll take them one at a time and do them all service. Please come up to the mic here and we'll discuss these things.
Could I please have your views on fasting?
Okay. Doug, take charge on that question if you would, sir. I think we'll have some fun with this one.
Well, from personal experience, I got into fasting about 10 years ago, and based on a lot of things I'd read, I was very, very optimistic about it. And I can, just tell you a few things from observing what happened to my own body and what I've also seen happen to other people. I did a number of, I never did any water fasting, but I did a lot of juice fasting with Norwalk juice or, pulp-free juices and all that. And I did quite a number of different fasts in the 7 to 10 day range, and one that was 2 months long just on juices. And what I found was that, first of all, when I was just on a good, and by the way, I did minerals and enzymes and other supplements during the fasting as well. But what I did find that was interesting was when I was on just basically a good diet with a lot of raw food in it and taking minerals and enzymes and other supplements, I got rid of many, of the little tumors out of the intestines. And that's happened both before and after the year when I did all the fasting. During that year when I did all the fasting, I did a total of about 125 or 130 days of fasting over the course of a year. I didn't get rid of any corn and fuzzies at all, any of the tumors whatsoever during any of the fasting, no matter how long the fasting went. I never got rid of any tumors. Once I got off the fasting and started eating again, and after 3 or 4 months when I got the body built up again, I once again started to get rid of the tumors. So one of the first things I would say is a lot of people look at fasting as a good opportunity to cleanse the body and all that. And from my experience, I really think fasting is very, very limited in its ability to cleanse the body. I do believe you will purify the body to some extent by giving it a rest, but the results that I've seen with just a moderate diet and supplements were, greatly better than anything I ever saw with fasting and supplements. I did notice a number of fairly disturbing things that happened in my body on fasting. From an iridology standpoint, which we'll get into next week, what's called zone 7, which is the outer margin of the iris, where you have what's called the scurf rim. My scurf rim actually got thicker and darker during and this shows the condition of the body at the cellular level. My scurf rim got thicker and darker when I fasted, particularly during this prolonged fast. And that basically indicates that the body's going downhill quite rapidly, that the entire body is going into a state of unconsciousness or numbness. And one of the things that I would note here is that when I was fasting, I felt absolutely marvelous. I mean, I had no pain in the body, no discomfort, plenty of energy. I've never felt so great in my life as I did while fasting. The reason I felt so great was because my body was going numb. I couldn't feel the pain. I couldn't feel anything that was going on in the body. Now, when the body is truly healing and regenerating, you go into healing crisis. So if you're really healing and regenerating, how do you feel? You go through healing crisis and you feel horrible. Not like all the time. I mean, you'll go through a healing crisis, then you'll feel better. Then you go through another healing crisis, then you'll feel better. But I didn't have any healing crisis fasting. I just basically had a lot of numbness in the body. And I would notice that, remember we did the pinch test on Eunice yesterday? I had fantastic nerve supply before I started fasting. You know, just perfect nerve supply all the way out to the tips of the fingers and the toes. And from the fasting, my nerve supply got considerably worse, and I got quite numb in the extremities. And I would notice I would even have little like cuts and bruises on my hands, and I wouldn't have the slightest idea how I'd gotten them. You know, there'd just be no awareness of how I'd even gotten these. And another thing that I noticed from fasting, in order for the body to be healthy, you need to have your cranium, your skull. There's a certain amount of mobility that's necessary in the cranial sutures, which are like the joints between the different bones in the skull. And one of the things that I found from the fasting is that the cranium really locks up, and in particular this area right here, in what you might call your temple, that will really start to cave in on people. And I think one of the reasons for this is that you're not chewing when you're fasting, and chewing is one of the prime things that keeps the cranium mobile. But the other thing that you're also getting, and this is getting probably way beyond ourselves right now, but you're dealing with certain muscle structures that would tie in right up here, that would be a direct reflex to the pituitary gland, which is dealing with the level of pain. And basically what's happening in fasting is you're getting a tremendous amount of suppressed pain in the body because your body's getting very, very numb. And so that's one of the other reasons why you're going to get this, basically you're going to cave in at the side of your head. So I guess the short answer to the question is I'm obviously not a real big proponent of fasting based on what I've seen happen. I think for certain individuals who've already healed their body, who've already gotten to a state of very, very good physical health, I think fasting has a very, very good spiritual purpose. And I think that for an individual who's already in a very, very high level of health, I think fasting would have some wonderful applications for spiritual purposes. But the thing about it is most of us here aren't in that high level of health. We're still, if you start, and this will be painfully obvious to most of you after next week when we start to study the iris of the eye, most people are in a very, very low level of health and not ready for fasting. It's not something that's going to be of great benefit to most people, and it's probably going to be quite detrimental, I would say.
Let's go a little further. We're talking about principles of health. And there is a group of people here, frankly, which I have put forth a very definite prayer before we had the seminar that those people who should be here will be here, and that those people who shouldn't be here won't be here. And that way we get the cream of the crop, so to speak. Except for a few little things that, if I can be very clear with you, some people speak so loudly to me, I cannot hear what they say in words. Years ago, when I had a near-death experience with a massive heart attack when I was 40, during which time everybody expected me to die, and they wanted to take me to the intensive care unit, and I refused to go. And after a while, after 3 days of no pulse beat, and my body temperature was dropping rapidly, and no pulse could be found, and I couldn't say anything, I couldn't speak to anybody, I had the most amazing experience of people marching by to make sure that I wasn't going to be there, you know, making sure I was going to die for sure, where my enemies were the first ones to show up, and my best friends I recognized. But people spoke to me so loudly with their mind, I couldn't hear what they said in words. I have never lost that ability. And so, in a class such as this, what bothers to me is when people lie to me, which has happened since I have been here. There's been out and out lies from people that are here supposedly to learn how to heal themselves and how to heal others. There's been out and out lies that some people have told me. And I begin to take a good close look at this, and I wonder, what in the world are these people doing here? And all I can do is say to those who are the offenders, and I know who you are, for those who are offending and are trying to cover up for whatever motive and whatever purpose, because you're not treating me the same way as you would want to be treated as a human being. And there's been lies that have been said. Are you with me? And because of this, I sometimes hesitate to share things because I haven't got a clear group of people that I can work with. You understand what I'm saying? And as a result of that, for whatever motivation is there, I want you to change your ways now and vow in your heart before the God within you to never again knowingly tell a lie to another human being, and to treat every single person with whom you come in contact with nothing but pure integrity and honesty. All right? Now, some people I know because I can feel their energies. I know what they're thinking, I know what they're feeling, and I know that they're operating on hidden agendas. This does bother me because I don't feel in my heart to share with those people those things that I have worked many, many years to develop. And so those of you who are the offenders, make it right, straighten it out, and straighten it out quickly before the day is over. So I'm not going to be wasting my time on you in sharing things with you that you don't appreciate because you haven't put yourself in a position where you can appreciate it. Is that strong enough? Okay, because very gently, I'll tell you this much, when a person does clearly create a condition of dishonesty with me, I cannot invite them to advanced seminars, and I will not allow them in no matter how much they plead. That's that simple. I don't want them there because it detracts from the energy. And today we have a lot of people with a certain degree of hidden motives, dishonesty, always trying to get the better deal of the other person and feeling wonderful when they succeed. Always lying a little to make themselves look better than what they are. And this is the things that we're dealing with, the little white lies. If you lie, you'll cheat. If you cheat, you'll steal. If you'll steal, you'll murder. And this is the attitudes that I oftentimes see in people in developing over the years. And it begins with the little white lies and the cover-ups. So I'll say that. I'm just going to ask you to set your lives in order. Be honest with your mates. Be honest with your mismates. Be honest with your parents. Be honest with your children. And do everything you can to mend the fences that you have broken, where there's feelings that exist between you and other people. And then we begin to start making progress. Pay your honest debts rather than to squeeze the last nickel out of somebody when you decide that you don't have anything to give, while other people will give all that they have to come to a class like this. Am I making my point clear? Please understand that. And deal with other people in a manner in which you yourself would want to be treated, and protect them in their rights in every respect as you yourself would want to be protected by them. And that way you become your brother's keeper in every respect. Now in chapter 11 of book 1 of the Logic and Sequence series is what we call the list. That will be one of the most important things that you can study and learn and apply it. But don't go to chapter 11 in book 1. Start with chapter 1 and slowly progress up through the mental strains you'll have to go through to get there. And then you'll understand to a great degree chapter 11. And then you'll see what I'm talking about. But put away your hidden agendas. Sometimes your thoughts speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. And oftentimes what you don't say speaks much more loudly than what you do say. Now this is an awareness that all of you will increase in to the point where you will have that same experience. And when you have that experience, all of a sudden it becomes distressing to you, because you know the blackness of minds of people that we're dealing with. And I don't think we want that in body electronics. Anita, do you want to say something? Sure, Doug. Okay. I try to weed out people as fast as I can so that in the advanced classes we have nothing but people that are incorruptible and are people of absolutely pure intent with honesty and integrity in all that they do. And no matter how hard I try to weed people out, there's always a few people that slip through the net that are given a chance to straighten out their lives and oftentimes don't. So we've got those problems too. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was going to say, then usually that's me weed them out.
Say that again?
I said then at that point you usually have me weed them out.
Ah, yes. I have Doug doing my dirty work for me upon certain occasions. And that's, Doug needs the experience.
No comment.
Consent. Okay. And some of you have expressed to me your desire to continue on and become instructors. You don't know what you're getting into. The responsibility is tremendous. But I want to encourage all of you to straighten your lives out in every respect and to live lives of honesty and integrity with each other and with every single person you come in contact, and make things right with the people you've done wrong. When somebody, if I ask them a question, have you ever lied to anybody, and they say no, what do I immediately know about that person? They're lying. Please consider that. We've all done our job on each other one way or the other. We're masters of deceit, we're masters of war, and it's time to put all that behind us and to recognize the oneness that's here. In Hawaiian culture, of which I feel very much a part, with the Polynesian culture, there's a word in Hawaiian culture called Aloha. And everyone said, oh, that's a way of greeting. Ah, yes. But I have been taught the true meaning of the word Aloha. Aloha, in the perfect sense, means, I see the God in you. You see the God in me, and together we are one family. Now that word aloha is extremely important because in Hawaii, in the early years, there was never any doubting the activities of another Polynesian or human being there in the Hawaiian Islands, because I see the God in you, you see the God in me, and together we are one family. And everyone lived to share their blessings with one another. Nobody was hungry, nobody did without, there was no greed, no avarice, no hidden motives. Everyone was simply open and loving and kind, non-judgmental, non-critical, and completely non-condemning of every other human being. Now, this concept of being non-critical doesn't mean we're blind to the actions of another person. We always give them the benefit of the doubt, knowing that eventually they're going to straighten their lives out. Now, if they didn't, then they would go to a kahuna under threat of their life. If they got there to the kahuna in time, then if their body wasn't killed before they got there, then they had a chance for rehabilitation. These are called cities of refuge. And the people would stay there until the kahuna gave his stamp of approval on the person and would allow them to go back into society again in a reformed positioning. I remember we had our first V&C class in Hawaii. We had that in a Boy Scout camp where it was built on a city of refuge. You can feel the energies there from the city of refuge with the old remains and the old homes that the kahunas lived in that area and so on. It was an interesting situation. It wasn't a visualization and consciousness class. It was a instructor seminar. We were there for 4 weeks. That was the first one we had in Hawaii. But you become aware of the old legends that exist there to this day. So, in dealing with this work, those of you that wish to continue now after my little talk, you're certainly welcome next week. Those that don't want to set their lives in order and they want to continue doing their little white lies and so on, I don't want you here. If you want to change and straighten your life out and not be, shall we say, proud of yourself for your problems, then if you want to keep that position of aloofness and separateness, then find another way to live your life, but not in my classes. I'm not interested in numbers, I'm interested in quality. And that's all I wanted to say. I had to get that off my chest. Fair enough? If the shoe doesn't fit, don't worry about it. If the shoe fits, the best place right now for that shoe is not in your mouth. Okay? Some people protest too vigorously. Okay? Now, let me get on with the business here of questions.
John, could you give us some information, please, about people who've had operations and have metal plates either in their spine, maybe in their leg, or in their scalp?
We've had people who have had, for example, Herrington rods placed in their spine for curvature of the spine. We have x-rays where the Herrington rods are there. They have one point holding. They have burning, searing pain up and down their spine, and all that's left on the next x-ray are 3 little half-present little attachments on the spine where the Herrington rod used to be. And that plate is completely gone. We've had people who have had stainless steel wrapped around their lower part of their lumbar spine with an entire back fusion. That a person would be in terrible pain for 9 consecutive years because the back fusion didn't hold. We've had a fellow that Doug knows, Eugene Drews. And Eugene was on this one gentleman for 2 days. And during the time he's felt nothing but electricity on the point holding for 2 solid days. At the end of 2 days, the back was totally healed. And on the x-ray, there was no more stainless steel wire around the lumbar spine, which was there to help with the back fusion. And the person eventually, where he couldn't bend over to even tie his shoelace, he was working in a lumber yard with sacks of cement and doing all kinds of shoveling of coal and one thing or another and carrying large beams and loving the physical exercise because it's the first time he'd done that for years because he couldn't work with his back problem. Now we've had other people where we have, Doug has, do you have that or do I have it? That huge thing in the hip where the fellow had a, you gave that to me. Well, I have it somewhere among my stuff then. A fellow by the name of Frank Kirby in West Virginia had a large steel, what would you call it? A bracket that the body rejected and pushed right out through the side of his hip, you know, and just literally pushed it out, took the screws and unscrewed the screws that were in there that were set, and the whole thing came out and had to be surgically removed.
Some of the screws were about that long, quite good sized screws there, where it was, you know, into the bone.
I'll say there's a couple of kilograms of weight there.
Yeah.
That big, huge steel mass, and that had to be surgically removed. We've had other situations wherein people have had problems that the body adjusted to with the steel plates in their head or in their back. We've had other things surgically removed because everything healed except the place where the steel was, and that steel had to be removed so a completion on the bone structures could be healed. So every person is a little different. But yes, we've had these problems, and each one had to be handled separately with its own unique personality. Okay? Now, if you ask me what happened to the steel, the only thing I could refer you to is the work of Dr. Louis Kervran, and study up on the subject of biological transmutation, because I am sure that this is what happened, is that the material that was steel transmuted completely and went into another form. That's the only thing that could have happened. But he will give you the theories which appear plausible, and the research that he has, where he has over 1,000 different proven situations where there was a change of one element into another, what they call biological transmutation. Doug?
Well, I was just going to say, the first year or so that I was doing body electronics, there was one gentleman who had the Herrington rods, you know, on either side of his spine, and these are about as big in diameter as like a pencil, a little bit bigger, and maybe about that long or so, two of these. And this guy on probably about at least 4 different occasions that I was present. The first time it happened at an instructor's course, he went through burning, searing pain for several hours in a point holding session, and his steel rods totally disappeared. He then didn't have the steel rods for maybe a month or so, I guess. Got back home, basically went back into his old ways of thinking, fell back into the same patterns. The steel rods reappeared in his back. He came out to Hawaii for a visualization and consciousness course that I was also at, and during the 2 months of that course, I think the rods disappeared and reappeared at least 3 more times. And on one particular occasion where I was right there as it happened, they disappeared sort of gradually over about 20 minutes, and then they actually reappeared in, I'd say, less than 3 seconds. They were there, and they just, when they came back, they just literally just came right back.
Okay, now, bottom line, I know a little bit about what I'm talking about here, all right? Doug was present at this time. I don't think Anita had arrived on the scene yet. She is still in San Francisco. But what had taken place with this gentleman is he wanted to prove to all of his friends that he could manipulate matter. Okay, if you have a talent where you can manipulate things, never show that to anybody, because that's a gift to you. And you might only use a talent or two once or twice in a lifetime. We're not here to prove anything to anybody, folks. You follow me? But yet he wanted to prove that he could get rid of the Herrington rods, which he did. But he did it in a way where he chose to manipulate matter from the outside in. I taught him how to do this. I taught him how to speed up the energy patterns in the steel rods, which he did, and he increased the, I'll use the word vibrational rate in the steel rods, and the steel rods began to feel, which Doug felt with his own hands, it felt like a piece of spaghetti for a while, and then it disappeared completely into nothingness. And then he would get afraid that it would come back, so he couldn't prove to people how wrong they were in not believing in what he could do. It was a power trip on his part. And so the moment that he felt fear again, what does fear do? Bring back the very thing upon him that he had feared. Okay. Now, so teaching him how to manipulate matter was something here that I shouldn't have done, but I did. Because he didn't do what we tried to teach in the class, which was to release the suppressed trauma, which included the fear, okay, which included the suppressed pain, which included the suppressed anger, etc., and to get him to re-experience the incident of how he broke his spine in the first place, totally crumbled one of the vertebrae, which had to have the rods in there to keep the back from falling apart. He had to have the rods there surgically. Now we got the vertebrae all straightened out. Doug will remember that. The vertebrae was fine. He could do his yoga exercises when the rods were gone.
The disc that had been removed regenerated.
The what?
He had one of his discs removed.
Yeah, all the discs regenerated.
And that regenerated.
That along with the vertebrae itself, which had all been crumbled in this industrial accident. He was a builder. Now what took place is that each time we got rid of the rods and he would not go back and re-experience the trauma because he was in favor of using the kahuna techniques of just speeding up the energy pattern and removing the steel rods by outer manipulation. This is wherein we can manipulate matter from the outside in. But if there is not a change of consciousness, if there's no change of consciousness, none whatsoever, then at the moment that we have any resistance of any kind, that condition will return upon us in 3 seconds. Now this might sound unbelievable to you, but what Doug and I are telling you is right on. Doug, did you have something else you want to say there, please?
Well, just what you've said. It's the what you talked about earlier in the day was you said we've got the level of physical matter, which to most of us is what we perceive as being real, and basically lying at the next level up and basically determining the structure of physical matter is the energy field, or what John's called the morphogenic or morphogenetic field. But this is an energy pattern. Both the physical matter and the morphogenetic field exist within time and space. Each of these, though, is determined by the level of thought or consciousness, which is actually simultaneously in time and space as well as outside of time and space. And so you can manipulate the energy fields all you want, which is what this gentleman had learned how to do, and you can bring about changes in physical matter. But the thing about it is if there's no corresponding change in consciousness, which there wasn't in this particular case, then all the energy manipulation in the world is only really going to be temporary, because it's only a matter of time before the energy pattern is going to return to just what it was before, because it's the thought or consciousness, which has not been changed in this case, which is going to then determine the energy field or the morphogenetic field, which then determines the structure of physical matter. You can very definitely manipulate energy patterns from the outside in, but you'll never get a permanent change that way, because you can't change consciousness from the outside in. There's no mechanical way to change consciousness. There's no external way to change consciousness. You have to actually the only way to do it is to re-experience the trauma itself and the various resistances and judgments that are locked in with it. And that's not something that can be done through any type of manipulation or any type of external playing around with energies. And for whatever reason, this one individual, he wanted to do it his way. He wanted to be able to do it by sheer force of will. And you can definitely get physical matter to change by sheer force of will, but the glitch is that it won't be permanent. It's always going to go back eventually if the underlying thought hasn't changed.
Yes.